Chapter 22:14. Mu Shuai, are we not going to care about the life and death of these brothers? Don't tell me we don't care about the families of these brothers? Are we just going to stand by and watch them be framed and humiliated? Marshal Mu, are you really going to do this? Everyone did not leave immediately. They all looked at Marshal Mu in a daze. Their eyes were full of confusion and hatred. Was Marshal Mu really frightened by Wuxia's series of methods? Was he going to admit defeat this time? Was he really going to give in this time? I never repeat what I say twice. Don't make me repeat myself. Mu Tianlan's face was livid. Guards! Use the big stick and chase all these people out of here. Whoever dares to go out and disobey the military order will be punished for treason. His whole family will be executed and his whole family will be implicated. Marshal Mu! Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. But they were all pushed out by the guards of the marshal's mansion. With a bang, the door was closed tightly, completely isolating the space on both sides. A group of generals stood in front of the door. They were all cold and looked at each other. Everyone's faces were full of grievances and despair. If Marshal Mu really stood by and ignored this matter, the Dream Slayer army would basically be announcing the end of a dead end. Deep sighs could be heard. Mu Tianlan drove all his subordinates out of the door and stood in the courtyard for a while. Then he slowly walked into his study with heavy steps. How is it? Mu Tianlan asked quietly in his study. He seemed to be talking to himself. However, in the seemingly empty room, someone immediately replied. Wuxia has ordered all the arrested officers of the Dream Slayer army to confess. Everyone will be tortured until they are disabled, regardless of whether their family members are dead or alive. If they are humiliated, the dead will be beheaded in public. As long as there is a rumor, as long as it involves the officers of other armies, they will be immediately arrested and brought to justice. No matter who is involved. The descendants of these officers are basically unmarried. Their families are inextricably linked. Under the order to exterminate their families, even their in-laws have been arrested. The extent of the involvement is shocking. So far, the number of officers of the Dream Slayer army who have been arrested and imprisoned in the heavenly prison has exceeded 7,000. Including their families, there are almost 100,000 people. This number is still rising. The prison cells are gradually overcrowded. Some of the people who are considered to be too suspicious by Wuxia's faction and have high backgrounds have been detained in private prisons. However, the search is still going on, and there is a trend of it gradually expanding. Currently, it is only limited to the Imperial City. The criminals in the surrounding areas are facing the same situation. Overall, this time, at least 1 million people have suffered because of this. This number is even the most conservative estimate. In addition, the disbanded 500,000 soldiers of the Dream Slayer army have been disbanded. They have been disarmed and returned to their fields. However, although everyone who returned home was not detained, they were humiliated in various ways. It seems that as long as it is a person, no matter how heinous and evil he is, as long as he is in front of the Dream Slayer army, he is superior. He can be humiliated in any way, in any way. This kind of unscrupulous persecution is getting more and more intense. Currently, it has spread to 41 cities around the Imperial City. And it is still spreading and expanding. If we really don't care, when this matter comes to an end, I am afraid that at least 30 million people will suffer because of this. The voice in the void spoke faintly, recounting such a tragic event, but there was no emotion in the voice at all. Mu Tianlan took a deep breath and said, "How is the Heavenly Armament Pavilion now? Where are they active? Are they active frequently? Since yesterday, our men have been provoking them." However, the host of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, Xie Danqiong, is getting more and more cunning. He refuses to go deep, and the number of masters under him has increased. His strength is also more powerful, so it is difficult to lead him here, the voice in the dark said. You go there immediately and tell him in person that the military has decided to cooperate with him this time. Let him take his men 500 miles away from the Imperial City and move around. Then we will give him a big gift, Mu Tianlan said slowly, with a trace of pain in his eyes. I am afraid that Xie Danqiong won't believe this. He is not only cautious, but also a phoenix that never lands in a place without treasures. The person in the dark hesitated. Don't worry about this. What you need to do is to determine the approximate location and then send me a message with your divine soul. I will use the divine soul doppelganger to go there and negotiate with Xie Danqiong personally. Mu Tianlan took a deep breath. This matter must be kept secret. Yes. In a dense forest. Xie Danqiong was dressed in black, and his handsome face was full of doubts. He stood quietly on the treetop, standing still. On the path in the forest, a large group of escorts was walking. The cries of the group were earth-shattering. Along the way, the closer they got to the imperial city, the more such things happened. Xie Danqiong couldn't help but be surprised. This situation was really strange. This was because there were many handsome men among the prisoners. They were majestic and strong. With Xie Danqiong's eyesight, he could easily tell that these men were all experts. Even if they weren't at the level of being able to fight alone, they were still quite outstanding. But why did so many masters commit crimes at the same time? And many of them were even physically disabled. Such people could be regarded as a big fortune in any world. Why did they end up like this? I am afraid that this matter is very strange. Give the order to focus on the investigation. Xie Danqiong said. There was really nothing to focus on in this matter. He believed that as long as he caught someone and asked, he would know the whole story. It was nothing more than a competition between the military forces. These people in front of him were the ones who lost. Dream Slayer Army? It is the Dream Slayer Army? Because they failed to eliminate Chu Yang? The remaining people were all subdued by Chu Yang? They betrayed Mo Yuntian? The Dream Slayer Army that stayed behind in Mo Yuntian was convicted because of this? One person was convicted, and the whole clan was implicated? Xie Danqiong's elegant eyebrows tightly wrinkled when he realized what had happened. This matter was a little interesting. Then what should he do? Also, during this period of time, some people on Mo Yuntian's side deliberately lured him to the direction of the imperial city. They clearly had no evil intentions, but their attitude was really ambiguous. What was this situation? Did this deliberate lure have anything to do with this matter? Xie Danqiong knew his own situation. Although he had narrowly escaped death several times, and had many fortuitous encounters, his cultivation had improved greatly. Now, he had reached an extremely high level. But there was still a considerable distance to the level of a saint. It was difficult to reach it in one go. Even if he could advance to the level of a saint, so what? He was definitely not a match for the few big shots in Mo Yuntian's military, not to mention that he was not a saint yet. If they really wanted to completely annihilate him, he was afraid that the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, which seemed to be flourishing for a while, would be destroyed within a day and a night. In the end, he would be the only one who would be able to rely on Big Brother's heavy Dan to barely escape. But why was there such a strange situation now? Xie Danqiong felt that this should not be a bad thing. At least, it was worth taking a risk and trying. Now that he had suddenly received such exciting news, Xie Danqiong felt a little more confident. It turned out that this matter was directly related to his boss Chu Yang. But they should not know my relationship with Chu Yang. But my Heavenly Armament Pavilion is now the biggest bandit group in Mo Yuntian. Since that is the case, they came to find me. Xie Danqiong stood on the treetop, deep in thought, calculating the next step. Chief, that person wants to see you. Please make a decision. Someone transmitted a message. Xie Danqiong's subordinates had given this mysterious expert a special name. They didn't know where this person had come from, and they didn't know his specific identity. However, this person had lured and coerced Xie Danqiong's Heavenly Armament Pavilion all the way to its current position. He had gradually led Xie Danqiong's Heavenly Armament Pavilion to its current position. Xie Danqiong did not understand this person at all. But he knew one thing. This person's cultivation was far higher than his. If he really had any unfavorable thoughts, his people would have already suffered heavy casualties. If they were deliberately tracked by this person, his chances of escaping would be very slim. Okay, I will go and take a look. Xie Danqiong felt the viburnum flowers on his body and took a deep breath. Heavenly prison. The entire prison was filled with this kind of smell and was filled with this kind of sound. The gloomy environment, the sinister smile of the officials, the miserable cries, all the other prisoners in the prison kept quiet out of fear. Even some of the heinous criminals who had killed countless people were trembling all over, their bodies shaking like a sieve. Even those heinous criminals had never been treated so cruelly, right? What kind of crime did these people commit in the end? Why did they receive such treatment? As more and more prisoners entered the heavenly prison, it was almost full in just a short day. Yu Lai gave the order. The prisoners who were originally imprisoned in the heavenly prison, if they had committed serious crimes, they would be executed collectively. As for those who had committed relatively minor crimes and had served more than 3 years, each of them would be given 100 whips and released from the heavenly prison. This decision made countless prisoners feel as if they had been pardoned and were secretly delighted. But who knew that the 100 whips would not be easy to endure? Basically, after 100 whips, only 10 out of 100 people would die. Those who were lucky enough to survive would have injuries all over their body. For a time, the heavenly prison was flooded with blood and the bones of the dead were piled up like a mountain. That very night, in the past few days, the head of the website has come to my place, so I have to postpone the outbreak. But after I send the guests away, I will immediately work hard. Of course, there will be a guaranteed update no matter what. Everyone, don't worry. Chapter 22:15. It was night, in a heavily guarded palace in the Moyun Heavenly Palace. Ink Cloud Heavenly Emperor Yuan Tianjie was already preparing to go to bed at this moment. In front of him was a stunning beauty. This person was Yuan Tianjie's first wife, the current Ink Cloud Heavenly Court's official Heavenly Empress. That beauty frowned, opened her red lips, and said in a gentle voice, "Your Majesty, although I shouldn't meddle in state affairs, I'm afraid that handling this matter like this is really a bit too much. Marshal Mu has been loyal and devoted for hundreds of thousands of years, and he has worked hard for many years. Why do you have to make things like this? He is your old official, why hurt the heart of a loyal official?" On Yuan Tianjie's thin face, his eyes flashed inexplicably and he said softly, "It's fine." The Empress was a bit anxious. "Your Majesty, please reconsider this matter. Mu Tianlan is loyal to me, I naturally know this, and I have never doubted it. It's just that Mu Tianlan has already sat on this throne for a whole 130,000 years. Yuan Tianjie said softly, as if he was explaining to the beauty, but also as if he was saying it to himself. Then he said, "Zitong, don't worry, I definitely won't let Mu Tianlan fall completely, but his power have really reached the point where it needs to be reduced." The Empress sighed. "Your Majesty, in these years, from what I know, Marshal Mu's power has already been reduced hundreds of times. But at those times, there has never been such overwhelming resentment. This time is really very different from the previous times. Your Majesty, please reconsider." Of course it's different, so the effect of the previous times was not so obvious. The sum of the previous hundreds of reductions may not be able to compare to this one time. Yuan Tianjie said lightly, his tone was extremely calm, but the meaning of his words was thought-provoking. However, at this point, there was already nothing more to say about this topic. But Yuan Tianjie still said, "I believe that Mu Tianlan will understand." This sentence, which seemed like an explanation and comfort, was still meant for that beauty, or perhaps for Yuan Tianjie himself. The Empress sighed softly and did not continue this topic. Perhaps in the past, Mu Tianlan would have understood. But this time, you attacked Mu Tianlan's most beloved and most valued troop. At the same time, they were also Mu Tianlan's real right-hand men. This time, you have completely shaken Mu Tianlan's foundation and damaged him. Would he really understand? Yuan Tianjie was clearly also considering this issue. He said, "Looking at the history books, the people who were able to sit on the highest seat often didn't have the intention to sit on the throne. Those who were able to ascend the gate of heaven, if they weren't outstanding talents, then it was because of the situation. Apart from a few peerless geniuses, most of them were pushed up by their most loyal subordinates." Yuan Tianjie said softly. So there are times when it is necessary to reduce the thrust? The Empress faintly said, even if you know that this person is loyal and has no ulterior motives, you still have to do this. This is the sorrow of being a monarch in the first place. It's a fate that keeps repeating itself. Yuan Tianjie closed his eyes, and his expression returned to being emotionless. It can't be helped. The heavenly Empress no longer spoke. It's late. Go to sleep. The lights went out. The entire imperial city fell into a state of extreme silence. The sky won't fall. It was true that the sky wouldn't fall. But what would Mu Tianlan's final reaction be? What practical actions would he take? Would he understand or not? Would he accept it? Yu Ningyan ordered his subordinates to seize the time to interrogate and torture the criminals. So, they worked almost non-stop at night. Moreover, Yu Ningyan's subordinate, Wang Banyue, specially selected some people who had conflicts with the Dream Slayer army, especially the low-level officers and even soldiers, to interrogate the higher-level officers of the Dream Slayer army. Originally, the officials of the Ministry of Justice in the prison were only there to assist. They didn't have any decision-making power at all. This kind of comfortable feeling of being weak and bullying the strong, and the other party couldn't resist at all, made these people very satisfied. Originally, these officers of the Dream Slayer army were existences that they couldn't even look up to. But now, at this moment, they were being humiliated and abused by their own subordinates. Thinking back to their majestic appearance in the past, comparing the two, their cruel mentality was even more perverted and satisfying. They used all kinds of methods that should be used and shouldn't be used. But the officers of the Dream Slayer army were suffocated to death and humiliated to death. The sounds of yelling and shouting in the prison were extremely fierce. All kinds of screams rose and fell, and it was like hell on earth. It was late at night. However, the torture and interrogation in the jail still continued. The screams never stopped, and they were incessant. It was already the third watch. The prison was still brightly lit, and the oil lamps flickered. But in the dark atmosphere of the prison, it was still so gloomy and scary, and there were ghosts everywhere. Inside the prison, there was a sentry every 3 steps, and a sentry every 5 steps. Adding on the garrison, the Ministry of Justice was really impregnable and unbreakable. Outside the prison, there were many military camps. Weapons flashed, and there were patrols. Every time, there would be 2 patrols passing by. There were countless sentries in the open and in the dark. Furthermore, in order to prepare for the worst, Yu Lai had deployed a large number of soldiers to guard the prison. There were 20,000 soldiers in the prison and 200,000 soldiers outside. They were spread out in all directions, surrounding the prison from the outside like an iron bucket. With such tight security, it was obvious that even a mouse would not be able to enter and leave freely. If you wanted to enter, you could. As long as you used your life in exchange, this was called the price. In the snowy night, the snow continued to fall. In the marshal's mansion, Mu Tianlan looked dazedly at the snow outside the window. He murmured, "Awakening dream?" Behind him, a dark shadow appeared for a moment, and someone said in a sinister voice, "Everything has been arranged." Mu Tianlan said, "How is it on Marshal Yu's side?" The shadow said, "Yuaji went to the rain-admiring pavilion tonight to discuss with military advisor Wang Banyue to formulate this and this and this and this strategy. Afterwards, she issued an order to change the guard outside the prison. Yuaji appointed the commander of this wave to be. Yuaji then went to the study room. Wang Banyue followed her in, and the 2 of them drank wine inside. The wine they drank was pine cloud wine. There were side dishes on the table. They were called. Then Wang Banyue left. Prince Yu sat in the study for a while and then went back to sleep. He first went to Third Aunt's room, but came out 15 minutes later. He stood in the snow, and then went to the garden to relieve himself. Then he went to Third Aunt's room. After passing through 2 corridors, Prince Yu went in and did not come out. According to the situation of Marshal Yu's residence, half a month ago, there was nothing unusual in Third Concubine's room. There shouldn't be any secret passages or doors. Therefore, Marshal Yu has been sleeping in Third Concubine's room until now. There was the sound of a man and a woman making love in the room. The person who made the sound of a man panting was confirmed to be Prince Yu himself. If Yu Jian heard these words, she would first be surprised, then ashamed, but then she would only feel her hair stand on end. His every move, what he said, what he did, what he said, what he did, what he said, what he did, what he did, what he did, what he did, what he ate, what he drank, the details of his life, etc., were all strictly recorded by Mu Tianlan. Even the details of relieving himself, making love with a woman, etc., were all recorded. It was sent to the ears of his greatest enemy. Prince Yu urinated. He did not go to the toilet and did not let anyone serve him. He just sat under a tree? Mu Tianlan frowned and said, "It seems that he is in a hurry." The shadow person smiled and said, "Yes, he is in a hurry. Prince, you should be asleep now." Mu Tianlan smiled slightly. Yes, he is very tired. Especially after that incident, he is recovering from serious injuries. He does not know how to control himself. The shadow person gave an understanding smile. It seems that Prince Yu will have a good dream tonight. If he is tired, he naturally needs a good rest. Mu Tianlan said lightly. Yes, the key is whether Marshal Mu is willing to let him have this good dream until it is finished. The shadow person grinned. It is easiest to wake up from a good dream. The reason is clear. Mu Tianlan did not turn around and said in a low voice, "Tonight is the time to wake up from the dream. It is the time to distinguish between the clear and the turbid." The person in the shadow answered respectfully. Mu Tianlan stood still for a long time. When the snow on the ground outside the window had reached 3 inches, he said softly, "Go." The shadow suddenly flashed and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Mu Tianlan paced a few steps in the study and sat down in the armchair. The lines on his face moved and a cold smile appeared. Dream awakening. You cut my dream, so I will awaken your dream. It is time for 500,000 soldiers to wake up from their dream, and you, Prince Yu, should wake up from your dream. Although the night was deep, the torture in the prison was still in full swing. Outside the prison, in the hazy snow that was still falling, 7 or 8 white shadows began to flicker gradually. The number of flashing white shadows was increasing, and they sneaked directly toward the military camp in the south. They were like snowflakes rolled up by the wind. These white shadows moved extremely fast. Often in a flash, they had already crossed a distance of 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. At the outermost periphery were the guards of the military camp and the patrol team. A white shadow floated over in the snow as if it was invisible. With a stretch of his hand, he brought out more than a dozen residual shadows. At the same time, the 2 patrol teams that took over were covered by his mouth and nose at the same time, and then they fell to the ground silently. Every person who could serve as a guard here was not an ordinary warrior. However, under the hands of these people, they had been put to the ground one after another without even making a sound. After falling down, he was carefully helped to a dark corner and leaned against the wall. They were like sleepers who neglected their duties. Chapter 22:16. The men in white were extremely careful when they made their moves. Other than not hurting them, they could also make them fall into a deep sleep for a long time. Even when they woke up again, they might not be able to confirm whether they had fallen asleep or had been knocked unconscious. Immediately, these white-robed men let out a very strange goo-goo sound. In the dark night, it was still very low, like the sound of underground rats. However, as this voice rang out, countless white shadows rushed over. For a moment, there were countless of them, and it was hard to count. The next moment, these people stopped at the side of the barracks. There was a garrison station there. Their only task was to prevent criminals from escaping. A white-robed man let out a whistle. At this time, an officer walked out of the barracks. He looked around and said, "Did you find anything strange?" The sentry replied, "Sir, for the time being, we did not find anything strange." The officer nodded. "Thank you for your hard work. During this period of time, everyone must keep their eyes open. The remnants of the rebels are very powerful. We must not be careless. If something happens, we will all be in trouble." "Yes. All right, it's time to change shifts." It's only the beginning of winter and it's already so cold. Fuck, it's only because our team is raised by stepmothers. Fuck, it's like freezing popsicles here. Let's go back and take a rest. Thank you for your concern. Along with the voice of gratitude, a total of 32 sentries stood up. Then, the 30 people behind the officer began the handover procedures and took over these people's original tasks. The sound of footsteps sounded. 2 teams ran over. Facing the vast expanse of snow, they shouted a few times and then began to patrol. The officer smiled strangely and said, "The handover must be smooth. There must be no mistakes. Understand?" Then he nodded and went back. When he reached the corner, he unexpectedly took out a sharp dagger from his bosom without any warning. He roughly gestured, and then stabbed the dagger into his own chest, where it was a vital point. That officer's body slowly slumped to a corner as if he had fainted. It was only natural for him to be seriously injured and unconscious at this moment. A man in white appeared in front of him in a flash and carefully examined his injuries. After confirming that there was no danger to his life, he let out a long sigh of relief. With a wave of his hand, countless white shadows swarmed forward and passed through the checkpoint. All the guards who had just changed shifts were standing straight like wooden pillars. Thousands of people flew past them at high speed, but they didn't seem to notice it at all. The newly changed patrol team brushed past the white-clothed people. Both sides seemed to be facing air. Then, the white-clothed people continued to advance, and the patrol team continued to patrol in a strict manner. Just like that, they passed through 3 camps in a row without making a sound. All the sentry posts, all the spies, all the patrols, and all the guards of the 3rd Corps had been replaced. Countless people in white finally entered the supposedly impenetrable Moyun Heaven prison. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water. The defense system that Yuji thought was flawless for thousands of years was so vulnerable after Mu Tianlan really took action. Mu Tianlan had devoted hundreds of thousands of years of operation to almost control the military and the government with both hands. How deep were his tentacles? Even Yuan Tianji absolutely couldn't figure it out. Just when Yuji had just risen, Mu Tianlan had placed countless people around Yuji. After so many years, how many of Mu Tianlan's people were around Yuji? It was really hundreds of thousands of years of hard work. The horror of this foundation was absolutely indescribable and unimaginable. Once it was launched with full strength, it was like a thunderbolt, and the opponent had no possibility of resisting. At this time, the white-clothed people had entered the prison. Up to now, all the people on the periphery of the prison had been replaced. It had completely fallen into the hands of the white-clothed people. Moyun Heaven's prison had temporarily lost contact with the outside world. From the moment they entered the imperial prison, the group of white-robed men changed from their previous cautiousness and began a massacre. They silently slaughtered the guards of the imperial prison, slaying them with every blade and slaying them with every blade. It seemed that they had an irreconcilable hatred for these people. Wherever the cold light flashed, everyone was killed the moment they saw the light of the blade and the shadow of the sword. Each of these white-clothed people used a thin sword blade. When the sword stabbed directly into the heart, the sword chi exploded in the heart immediately. The internal organs were all turned into powder in an instant. The sword chi rushed up, and even the brain was turned into a pot of messy porridge in an instant. The next moment, when the narrow sword body was pulled out of the chest with a whoosh, there was no wound at all on the outside, but the sword person was already a complete corpse. These white-clothed people were all the most cold-blooded, cold-faced killing gods. Along the way, they harvested people's lives and there was no expression on their faces. But behind them, not a single person was left alive. There was no sign of life at all. Some of the more important interrogation rooms were handled by the officers under Yuji's command. The door was opened suddenly without a sound, and then the white figures suddenly rushed in. Without even a greeting, they killed mercilessly. A moment ago, they were still unscrupulous and arrogant, but the next moment, they were beheaded and their souls were gone. In less than a cup of tea's time, the smell of blood in the prison became thicker. Those officers of the Dream Slayer army, who had been tortured beyond recognition, were carefully carried by the white-clothed people on their backs, and then rolled forward. This one-sided massacre went on silently for more than an hour. Finally, a strange scream was heard from the prison. However, the screams in the heavenly prison rose and fell one after another. No one would notice the scream at all. The group of white-clothed people had already slaughtered countless people and entered the heavenly prison's belly. Everyone was calm, unhurried. With a sword, a cold light flashed, and a life was cut off. They pulled out their swords and left. With a cold face, they rushed to the next place and continued to wave their swords, kill, and save people. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Everyone seemed to be an expert in the field of executioners. They were very familiar with killing people, and they were very familiar with it. Thousands of people, and they were all top killers. Just like that, they killed their way through. Although the prison occupied a large area, they finally reached the end of the prison. Countless white-clothed people began to check around to make sure that no one had escaped. Regardless of whether they were dead or not, everybody was at least stabbed with a sword. Then, in a soft cry of surprise, the families of the officers of the Dream Slayer army were carried by the white-clothed people, and they quickly evacuated all the way. However, there were too many people to carry. Although the number of people in white was not small, their strength was still insufficient. Even though each person carried 2 people at a time, they still had to go back and forth 3 times before they managed to save everyone. In such a dangerous situation, the white-robed leader actually walked around the prison once more with his hands behind his back, checking and confirming once more. It was as if the examiner had just finished an exam, and all the students had handed in their papers and left, and the examiner had leisurely walked around. His calm and unhurried footsteps actually gave off a subtle and pleasant feeling as he walked through the bloody prison. After walking around, the white-clothed man showed a satisfied smile and said softly, "It's time to wake up from the dream." Who should wake up from the dream? Then, the white-clothed man waved his sleeve, dipped it in the blood on the ground, and wrote on the wall, "How dare you harm my subordinates? This is the result." Signed, Mu Tunlan was here. His body suddenly floated up, and he flew out of the prison like lightning. The heavenly prison, which could hold 100,000 prisoners, returned to silence. Only the sound of blood flowing out from the wounds of the corpses could be heard. It was full of blood. Outside the prison, Yu Meng's subordinates, who were standing guard, and the patrol team had changed into white clothes at this moment. They followed the white-clothed men and flew away. After walking for some distance, the group of people entered an inconspicuous courtyard. Tens of thousands of people walked in with their wounded on their backs. However, this inconspicuous courtyard was able to support so many people, as if it had an endless capacity. In the end, everyone disappeared from this small house, and there was not even a bit of noise. After a long while, an old man walked out of the small house, looked around, and suddenly took a deep breath. Then, his 2 hands slowly clapped on the ground. The instant his hand touched the ground, the snow on the ground of half of the imperial capital suddenly melted without a sound. White mist immediately rose from the ground. All traces of the white-clothed person's footsteps completely disappeared without a trace with the evaporation this time. At the same time, there were people in the north, south, east, and west of the imperial capital who clapped their hands on the ground. Therefore, in the entire imperial capital, a super big city that could hold tens of millions of people, there was no trace of snow except for the imperial city area. It was as if the heavy snow in early winter that had been falling for 2 days and 2 nights had never existed. However, the snowflakes in the sky were still falling slowly. The old man slowly lifted his hands from the ground, coughed, and murmured, "What a heavy snow!" The heavy snow continued to fall, and continued to dye the ground into a silver-white color. Chapter 22:17. On this night, the same thing happened in the 35 cities around Mo Yun Heavenly Emperor's capital. All the prisoners in the prison had disappeared without a trace. Without exception, all the guards in the prison died an unnatural death. Every prison was originally heavily guarded. However, The most bizarre and inconceivable thing was that every officer who was in charge of guarding the prison that night had strangely suffered fatal injuries, while all the guards had gone missing. No one knew if they were alive, or if they were dead. Their corpses were nowhere to be found. In all the prisons, as long as it was related to the Dream Slayer army, regardless of gender, old or young, all of them seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. Even the other prisoners in some of the prison cells had all disappeared. 35 cities and more than 50 official prison cells had been turned into a land of death, because there were only corpses inside. A total of more than 200,000 people had all died in this incident. There were only about 30,000 of them, and they were the original prison guards and officers of the Ministry of Justice. As for the rest, more than 75% of the total, about 150,000 people, they were all Wuxia's hardcore subordinates. The incident was far from over. Mo Yun Tian's vice commander Wuxia's concubine's family was executed at the same time. Not a single chicken or dog was spared. Wuxia lost an old father-in-law and countless mothers-in-law in one night. And Wuxia's #1 military advisor Wang Banyue, because after returning home, he remembered something and went to the military camp. So he escaped the disaster. But his whole family had all died at home. The mansions of several generals under Wuxia's command had also suffered a tragic attack. There were countless casualties. When this case came out, the world was shaken again. Mo Yun Heavenly Emperor Yuan Tianjie was originally still asleep, but he was awakened by the shock. It was not time for the morning court yet, but all the military officials of Mo Yun Tian had already gathered in front of the main hall. In one night, 200,000 people had died. More than 500,000 criminals had quietly escaped. This kind of thing, no matter the time, was a super big case. Even in the Missouri Yun Heavenly Court, this was the first time such a big thing had happened in a million years. When Yuan Tianjie learned of this matter, he smashed the dragon table in front of him into pieces on the spot. And those walls with words written on them had been completely moved and placed in the main hall. Mu Tianlan's name was impressively on it. Irrefutable evidence. Your Majesty, you have to seek justice for me. Yu Lai was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. His snot and tears were streaming down his face. He was truly heartbroken this time. The people who had been mobilized for this incident were all his most trusted subordinates. They were also all the people who had always been against Mu Tianlan and Marshal Mu's subordinates. Although there weren't too many high-level officers that died, the most loyal subordinates were all turned into corpses. This kind of loss was truly disastrous. Yu Lai asked himself if he could bear it. It was truly too disastrous. It must be Mu Tianlan who broke into the prison this time. Only Mu Tianlan had such great courage and ability to do this. Mu Tianlan had no respect for His Majesty. He pretended to obey, but secretly opposed. He killed the innocent and killed the loyal officials. His crime was unforgivable. Your Majesty, please investigate. Tears streamed down Yu Lai's cheeks as she knelt on the ground. Her eyes were filled with sadness. There was no need for Yu Yen to explain. The military officials all knew that this was a revenge. This was a revenge against Yu Yen. The reason was very simple. Yu Yen had planned and executed the plan to frame the Dream Slayer army. If it was just to slander Meng Wuya alone, perhaps this matter would have been over. But the problem now was that Yu Yan's appetite was too big this time. She had succeeded in framing Meng Wuya. She had even added insult to injury by killing the meritorious officials and implicating the innocent. She had created the greatest injustice since ancient times. This bloody case involved a wide range of people. It was unimaginable and appalling. The ultimate target was Marshal Mu. That was what led to this most decisive and bloody revenge. And such a big move had mobilized tens of thousands of saints and above, thousands of celestial beings, and even the super strong people at the saint level. Such a luxurious lineup, such a super big move, and to be able to do it so secretly, there were only two people in the entire black cloud sky who could do it. One was Marshal Prime Minister Yi Luoyue, Marshal Mu Tianlan. Apart from these two people, even the heavenly emperor of black cloud sky, Yuan Tianjie himself, might not be able to do it. Because if the Heavenly Emperor made a move, it would definitely be a grand and righteous move. He would definitely not act in private like this. Now, the person Yu Yen had offended was Mu Tianlan. As for who started this revenge, was there still a need to ask? It went without saying that he knew what was going on. Although the truth was known, and everyone was very clear in their hearts, at this moment, everyone's reaction was absolutely not like this. Before Yuan Tianjie could speak, many of the military officials had already submitted a memorial. Your Majesty, this matter definitely has nothing to do with Marshal Mu. In order to avoid suspicion, Marshal Mu has been at home these few days and closed the door. Moreover, he issued an order to his subordinates that whoever dares to take a step out of the house without permission is equivalent to plotting a rebellion, and their entire family will be executed. How could this be done by Marshal Mu? May Your Majesty investigate clearly and not wrongly accuse the good Marshal Mu. He has worked hard and made great contributions, and he has been loyal and devoted for hundreds of thousands of years. Don't disappoint this old official's heart. Yes, Your Majesty. To do such a big thing, even if they were all experts, at least 100,000 people would be needed. If we calculate the manpower needed to take the prisoners away, I'm afraid that even without 300,000 people, it might not be possible to accomplish this. But this night, all of the military camps under Marshal Mu's command were peaceful. There was absolutely no movement at all. This official can guarantee with my head that this matter is unmistakable. It definitely has nothing to do with Marshal Mu. Yes, Your Majesty. If it was really done by Marshal Mu, how could he be so stupid as to leave his name behind? It's still not too late to deliberately cover it up. This method of framing someone else is really too inferior. Yes, Your Majesty. This matter is definitely suspicious. Your Majesty, perhaps this matter is simply Yu Yan's way of deliberately framing Marshal Mu. It's nothing more than using some lives to achieve his own unspeakable ambitions. His intentions are condemnable. The official who said this was clearly already crooked, and crooked to the ends of the earth. When Yuan Tianjie heard this sentence, he didn't hide his crooked mouth at all. A real bastard. Using some lives? That was 200,000 lives, okay? Or using the lives of 200,000 loyal subordinates to frame Mu Tianlan. Although Yu Yan's ability was much worse than Mu Tianlan's, he definitely wouldn't be so brainless, but this couldn't be said clearly, because at the moment, only Yuan Tianjie firmly believed that it wasn't done by Yu Yan. As far as the Yu Yan that everyone knew, in order to achieve his goal, he might be able to do this. If he could really take advantage of this to bring down Marshal Mu, Yu Yan would definitely think that these people's deaths were worth it. Someone, summon Mu Tianlan to the palace immediately. Yuan Tianjie was furious. This matter was obviously done by Mu Tianlan. Even if others had the intention, they didn't have the ability to do so. Mu Tianlan came very quickly, because since this matter happened, he had already come outside the palace after getting the news. Although in order to avoid arousing suspicion, he had been waiting outside the palace for an audience. But with his cultivation, there was no reason that he couldn't hear Yuan Tianjie's roar. Your Majesty, I'm here. I know that I'm guilty. Please punish me. Mu Tianlan's expression was sorrowful. Oh, what are you guilty of? I didn't even know. Yuan Tianjie asked gloomily. Your Majesty is kind and benevolent. You're strict with yourself and lenient with others. But I neglected my duties, so that such a major case happened in the capital. I can't absolve myself from the blame. Please punish me severely, Your Majesty. Mu Tianlan replied sorrowfully. Mu Tianlan, you're really vicious. Yu Yan cried out in tears, my father-in-law's family is just ordinary people. Why do you have to be so cruel? If you're dissatisfied with me, just come at me. What about the soldiers under my command? Why do you have to be so cruel? When this sentence came out, 10% of the officials in the palace curled their lips. Everyone was more clear about some things that Yu Yan did. Your father-in-law was innocent? Then, the 500,000 soldiers of the Dream Slayer army and their millions of family members were innocent? Wasn't it you who made up the unwarranted case? You're dissatisfied with Mu Tianlan. You're an enemy. But what's wrong with the 500,000 soldiers? Didn't they still end up in a state of mourning because of you, and have nowhere to complain about their grievances? Now that such a thing happened to you, you actually say that you're innocent? The word, innocent. How dare you say it out loud? Mu Tianlan smiled faintly and turned around. He looked at Yu Yen contemptuously. It seems that Marshal Yu is sure that I did this big case? Yu Yen shouted angrily, if it's not you, who else could it be? Who else could it be? Mu Tianlan said faintly, Heavenly Imperial Court has always been a place that pays attention to the rule of law. Especially in our Moyen sky, it's even more strict. Since Marshal Yu is so sure that I did it, then Marshal Yu must have solid evidence? Please take it out and let me have a look. Let me be convinced and have nothing to say. Yu Yen was dumbfounded. Mu Tianlan was never speechless, but at this moment he really had nothing to say. Solid evidence? What solid evidence was there? He didn't even need to show forged evidence. His crime was like a myth. Yu Yen actually still didn't understand how Mu Tianlan's subordinates did everything yesterday. He couldn't figure it out. Where could he find evidence? Marshal Yu, why are you hesitating? Please take out the evidence. If there is solid evidence to prove that I did it, then Mu Tianlan will not resist and will be willing to accept the punishment. But if Marshal Yu can't take out the evidence and just keep talking, then don't blame me for accusing you of slandering me. Mu Tianlan said righteously. Chapter 22:18. In the next moment, Mu Tianlan seemed to notice the walls that had been dug out. He paused and then said, the so-called evidence that Marshal Yu believes in is not these walls, right? If Marshal Yu believes that these walls can prove that I did it, then I have nothing to say. But as far as I know, these walls should be taken from different places. No matter which direction you start from, you should be tens of thousands of miles away from each other after going in a circle. First of all, even though I don't want to belittle myself, I can't go to so many places at the same time in one night. I'm always alone. Second of all, the time of this case is about the same. I really can't be in two places at the same time. Third of all, this is not my handwriting at all. I have had some correspondence with Marshal Yu. I believe that Marshal Yu can recognize that this is not my handwriting. Last of all, Mu Tianlan's face was cold. Marshal Yu, if I really did it, then do you think you still have the chance to stand in front of me and testify against me? Marshal Yu's face was full of resentment, but he really had nothing to say. Yes, this so-called evidence could not convict Mu Tianlan at all. Instead, it could only be reduced to a laughingstock. Everyone knew that Mu Tianlan must have done this, but there was no evidence to prove it. Yes, what Marshal Mu said is reasonable. Although Marshal Mu is honorable, and I also believe that Marshal Mu dares to admit what he has done, this is indeed not Marshal Mu's handwriting. An official jumped out and said, Your Majesty, please investigate clearly and do not wrongly accuse an innocent person. Yes, I just checked again. All the soldiers under Marshal Mu's command did not move last night. No one went out. Yes, so Marshal Mu really has nothing to do with this. I dare to guarantee with my life that Marshal Mu is definitely not this kind of person. He would never do such a thing. Yes, Marshal Mu has always been noble. Yes, Your Majesty, Marshal Mu has always been loyal. Yes, Your Majesty, Marshal Mu has always been hardworking. It's true, Your Majesty. General Mu has always been honest, kind, and honest. In an instant, pleading voices filled the entire hall. It was as noisy as a market. All of you, shut up. Yuan Tianjie roared. Normally, Yuan Tianjie wouldn't have lost his composure like this, but right now, he was truly angered to the point of stupefaction. It doesn't matter how you guys plead for leniency. This decision is in my hands. What noble character and unquestionable integrity, loyal and devoted, hardworking and meritorious service. That's fine, but to actually fucking honest, dutiful, kind, and honest also came out. Were these words related to Mu Tianlan? What part of him was honest and dutiful? Which part of him was being kind and honest? Over the past hundreds of thousands of years, at least 3 billion people had died under Mu Tianlan's orders, if not 5 billion. This fellow was simply the #1 executioner of Mo Yuntian, and he actually had the kindness and sincerity of his mother. This mouth had no teeth at all. At this moment, another heavenly court guard captain rushed in, covered in blood. "Your Majesty!" "How is it?" Yuan Tianjie asked. "I was ordered to go to the heavenly prison to investigate. Inside, it was a tragic sight. However, I accidentally found some strange signs in the heavenly prison." This guard captain was a majestic and burly man. When he stood up straight, he was a full 2.5 meters tall, and his face was full of curly beard. He didn't seem to be scheming. But only those who were familiar with him knew that if you really thought so, then you were gravely mistaken. The meticulousness of this guard captain's thoughts was definitely the most shocking kind. This guard captain's surname was Zhao, and his name was very rustic. He was called Zhao Zhuang. But after becoming famous and holding an official position, he felt that his original name was really too rustic. So, Yuan Tianjie personally gave him the name Zhao Zhong. "What strange signs?" Yu Lai asked impatiently. Zhao Zhong didn't even look at Yu Lai. He just turned around and said, "Bring the things up." A response came from outside. Then, 7 or 8 burly men quickly walked into the main hall. Each of them held a tray with both hands. They walked up respectfully, handed the tray to the palace maids, and retreated. The first tray contained some weapon fragments. "It's the powder from the weapons that were damaged when the bandits fought with our people." Zhao Zhong pointed to the first tray. "These fragments show that there's a large amount of star silver mixed in these weapons." He raised his head. "And this kind of material, star silver, as early as 150,000 years ago, because it would cause a strong reflection when mixed into weapons, it's not good for concealing one's whereabouts. It has long been removed from the equipment of Mo Yuntian's standard army. In other words, the people who committed the crime this time are very likely not regular soldiers. This is one of the reasons." The second tray contains some cut-off clothes and cloth scraps. From the material of these clothes, it can be seen that these people's clothes are all wearing the Snow Army's leather robes on the outside. The color is white. Their purpose is obviously to use the snowy environment to pass off as genuine goods. But the clothes they wear on the inside are not. They belong to the military, but some more complicated materials. There's blood silk, tall cotton, and cape cotton. This is half a shoe sole, obviously cut off by a knife. It's a whole spiritual beast's tendon. It's a firebull. The firebull's tendon is hard and not suitable to be used as a shoe sole. Our military has never used it. This is the second reason. The third reason, the fourth reason, the 8th reason is that this is the most peculiar. Zhao Zhong picked up a corner of a strange weapon and showed it to everyone. Although they were in the main hall, they could feel that this strange metal was shining with some colorful light. "This is a petal," Zhao Zhong said, "and, in the prison, there are some traces of this petal-shaped weapon on some of the walls. Although the bandits have carefully scraped off a layer of the wall and annihilated the traces, there are still some hidden places that haven't been cleaned up. I believe that they left in a hurry when they left, so they didn't check too carefully. This broken half of a petal is deeply embedded in the wall. As far as I know, in the whole Heaven Imperial Court, there's only one person who can use this kind of petal as a weapon." Zhao Zhong said, "This person is a major suspect, or we can basically conclude the case. This case is done by this person. In Moyun Sky, except for the military and the government, there's only one person who can do this, and it doesn't even take a lot of effort to do it." Zhao Zhong's expression was very serious at this moment. Under such careful investigation, the suspicion about Mu Tianlan was reduced little by little. Now, even those who were originally certain that Mu Tianlan was the murderer were greatly shaken. "Who is this person?" Yuan Tianjie narrowed his eyes and asked. "Moyun Sky's biggest bandit leader now, the master of Heavenly Armament Pavilion, Xie Danqiong." Zhao Zhong's words were powerful and resonating. Suddenly, the crowd was boiling. Obviously, everyone knew this name. Xie Danqiong? It's actually him? Leading Heavenly Armament Pavilion alone, moving unhindered in Moyun Sky. Where the viburnum flowers fall, there are mountains of bones. Xie Danqiong. In the entire Moyun sky, maybe only this Xie Danqiong has this kind of power. Only Xie Danqiong can use this kind of flower petal as a weapon, and he is invincible. Only Xie Danqiong has the motive to incite discord within the military. All the signs above indicate that the mastermind of this case is Xie Danqiong. He is the one who committed this shocking crime. Also, he wants to frame Marshal Mu and try to cause Moyun Sky's military to have no peace. If something happens to the military because of this, it will be hard for them to target them. Just relying on the army of the local government is not a threat to Xie Danqiong. While Heavenly Armament Pavilion has only been established for a short period of time, it has become something now and cannot be ignored. Zhao Zhong finally came to a conclusion. This subject thinks that in this case, Marshal Mu is innocent and Marshal Yu is an innocent victim. The true culprit, the instigator, the one who wants to incite discord within the Black Cloud Sky military is the master of Heavenly Weapon Pavilion, the leader of the bandits, the user of viburnum flowers, Xie Danqiong. Yuan Tianji's face was dark, and he did not speak. The officials below all had different opinions. So it was Xie Danqiong who did it? This Heavenly Armament Pavilion has only been established for a short period of time, but their reputation is great. No wonder. Yes, the methods of this gang are crazy, but I hadn't thought that they would be so crazy and unrestrained. I really didn't think that Heavenly Armament Pavilion had developed to such a level. I remember when I mentioned Heavenly Armament Pavilion a while ago, it was just a small and unremarkable power. Yes, it's really too fast. However, this Xie Danqiong is quite good at taking advantage of opportunities. Didn't he choose the right timing this time? I'm afraid that even we would have suspected that Marshal Mu was behind this if Imperial Bodyguard Zhao hadn't investigated thoroughly and found out the truth. This Xie Danqiong is really too despicable. He really is cunning. We should take the time to exterminate him. But I heard that this Xie Danqiong comes and goes like the wind. He never leaves a trace. How can we exterminate him? Prime Minister Yi Luoyue stood there calmly. Hearing these discussions, she unconsciously rolled her eyes and then returned to her original state. She did not say a word and did not express any opinion. The perpetrator was Xie Danqiong? That was a joke. And it was that kind of broken joke that was not funny at all. Xie Danqiong himself and his Heavenly Armament Pavilion, even if they developed for another 10 years, they might not be able to do such a thing. Investigate. Investigate thoroughly. Yuan Tianji ordered furiously. Your Majesty is mighty. The officials bowed together. When Yuan Tianji left the hall, he felt his liver hurt from anger. Chapter 22:19. At present, all the signs clearly pointed to Xie Danqiong. All the evidence showed that it was done by that inexplicable Xie Danqiong. However, how could Yuan Tianji not know the truth? There was something fishy going on, but now it was no longer appropriate to make this matter a big deal. It seems that the plan to weaken Mu Tianlan's strength this time was right. Although the expected goal has not been achieved at present, it is also because of this that Mu Tianlan's hidden strength has been revealed. He has become so strong that even this emperor has to be amazed. This matter was clearly done by him, yet he was able to completely point the arrow to someone else. He has no suspicion at all, and even the public opinion is on his side. Today, Mu Tianlan obviously did not use all his secret forces to deal with Yu Qi, but if all these forces are activated, plus those generals in the military, what kind of power will it be? Can this emperor deal with it? Yuan Tianji's face was very ugly at this moment, extremely ugly. Give the order to pursue Heavenly Armament Pavilion with all our strength. As soon as Yu Qi returned home, he fiercely gave such an order. He also did not believe that this matter was really done by Heavenly Armament Pavilion. First, Heavenly Armament Pavilion did not have such strength, nor such powerful intelligence. Third, there were no insiders in the military. Fourth, there was no foundation. How could it be done by Heavenly Armament Pavilion? It was just a group of bandits. How could they have such great means? But now all the clues were on Heavenly Armament Pavilion. At the moment, only by catching Heavenly Armament Pavilion could they possibly catch Mu Tianlan's weakness, As for obtaining evidence of Mu Tianlan's crime from other aspects, Yuqi had never thought of it. With Mu Tianlan's degree of cautiousness, he would never let anyone catch any evidence. He had always been watertight when it came to doing things. In addition, Yulai asked herself if she really needed a way to vent. In one night, heaven and earth had flipped. Just when she was in high spirits, she immediately gave up. This breath was really gloomy and hard to release. Regardless of whether Heavenly Armament Pavilion was the perpetrator or not, they were the best punching bag right now. His vitality was greatly damaged and was no longer enough to fight against Mu Tianlan. Pass down the order. Besiege the Heavenly Armament Pavilion with all our might. Mu Tianlan immediately issued this order after he returned. The voices of the generals gathered in the marshal's mansion almost broke through the marshal's hall. Now, everyone was full of energy and high spirits. No wonder Marshal Mu was able to keep his composure. It turned out that he had prepared such a marvelous backup plan. This is truly a big deal. Those 500,000 people had all disappeared in one night. 200,000 enemies had all been slaughtered in one night. It wasn't just the resentment of the past few days, it was the resentment that had accumulated over the years. Everything was spat out in one go. As soon as they left the tent, the generals began a heated discussion. I haven't been able to shut my mouth the entire day. I wasn't even this excited when I was looking for a wife to consummate my marriage. Damn, this is too satisfying. Serves you right. That's right, that's right. I just want to see what kind of face Yuqi has now. I heard that in just one night, this fellow lost a father-in-law and so many mothers-in-law. Wow, why does that bastard have so many mothers-in-law? Isn't that simple? His fathers-in-law are all shameless. How many mothers-in-law are there? Hey, do you know? Yuqi's youngest father-in-law is only 43 years old this year. Yuqi is already several 100,000 years old this year. His youngest father-in-law is not even qualified to be his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great- time, Eugen used this opportunity to get rid of this little father-in-law. A person who isn't even qualified to be my grandson actually dares to be my father-in-law. Isn't that courting death? That's true. Indeed, it makes a lot of sense. This is simply a godly deduction. I reckon it's most likely correct. That's right, that's right. The other fathers-in-law may have been killed by that Xie Dan Qiong, but the youngest one is definitely not him. He must have taken advantage of the situation and touched his father-in-law. You're absolutely right. All the generals were in high spirits as they spoke, beaming with joy. One of them suddenly said, "But now we have to catch Heavenly Armament Pavilion and Xie Dan Qiong. What should we do? They have helped us a lot in this matter. Are we really going to catch them?" "Bah, are you stupid?" The others snorted together. "You're still thinking about whether to catch Xie Dan Qiong or not. What are you thinking? You're so stupid. Damn it, Xie Dan Qiong's Heavenly Armament Pavilion has saved many of my brothers and their families. If I can really meet him, I can't wait to kowtow to him. Catch Yuchi's motherfucker." That's right. If Yuchi can really catch the people of Heavenly Armament Pavilion, I will make trouble. Can I still help the enemy to deal with the benefactor? How can I be ungrateful? Quiet. Cough, I'm just too excited. Even if I have the heart, I don't have the guts. This kind of thing can't be said. Hee hee. While they were talking, Mu Tianlan's angry voice came out. What nonsense are you all talking about? Get out of here and do your work. Every single one of you better watch your mouths. Is this something you should be saying? Not only should you not say it, but you shouldn't even think about it. Listening to this strict reprimand, the generals stuck out their tongues and dispersed in a hubbub of laughter. The resentment and incomprehension from before had long vanished into thin air. Many people were thinking, although Marshal Mu's words are strict, there is some meaning in them. Blame us for talking nonsense? That means we've said too much? Also, is this something you can talk about? You can't even say it out loud? Well, since it's not something you can talk about, then it must be something you can do. Marshal Mu's meaning was, it doesn't matter if you do it, but you can't say it. That must be it. That must be it. Take this matter for example. You can do it but you can't say it. Since one of them had such a realization, naturally, everyone else had the same realization as well. As a result, an encirclement and suppression operation of the heavenly armament pavilion was carried out in a grand manner within the entire dark cloud sky. Xie Danqiong was currently in an unusually hidden place, looking at the hundreds of thousands of people in front of him with a melancholy face. If his thoughts could be summed up into one sentence, it would be, help. Damn it, Mu Tianlan said that he would give me a big gift, but I really didn't expect it to be such a big gift. This gift is indeed a big gift, but I can't eat it with my current small stomach. Not to mention that they are all wounded, not to mention that there are also family members. Where should I arrange for these people? Not to mention the Dream Slayer army soldiers from all over the place. Mu Tianlan, your fucking big gift is going to fill me to death. As the saying goes, you can't get fat by eating one mouthful. But now, Xie Danqiong didn't believe this at all. Because he had now become fat by eating one mouthful. And he had become a super fat one. Xie Danqiong was completely helpless about the current situation. During this period of time, even though he had a large number of supplies and a large amount of inventory, and he had also earned a lot of money, but his large number of supplies was only in comparison. Compared to the huge consumption of the current lineup, it was estimated that the number of people would exceed 5 million after gathering all of them. Then, my large number of supplies, even if it's just food and drinks, is enough for these people to use for 2 months. Not to mention, there are also a large number of wounded people who need medicine. And it seems that they need to use good medicine, otherwise, a large number of people will die. Big brother, where do I have so much medicine? Where do I have so many resources? Isn't this forcing people to die? Help! A figure suddenly flashed, and a man with a strong figure appeared beside Xie Danqiong with a bitter smile. Chief, what should we do now? Xie Danqiong held his forehead with his hand and groaned. What should I do? How do I know what to do? This damned Mudon. Then he said, there will always be a way when the time comes. Let's take one step at a time. Since these people have come to our place, we must take good care of them. Don't let anyone die of hunger or cold. Try to think of a way for those wounded people. Immediately send people to buy medicinal materials. Buy a large number of them. Take out all of our inventory. These people will be our brothers in the future. Yes, Chief. Pay attention to buying in batches. Go through some changes before returning to the secret base. Make sure that the people are well settled. Xie Danqiong sighed in melancholy at this point. His secret base could be said to be a secret in the past. There were few people there, and it didn't attract much attention. But now, what kind of secret was it? Millions of people were moving in. Just the smoke that rose from the chimneys every day was enough to reach the clouds. At this moment, there was a burst of dense air in front of them. Snow was fluttering in the air, and a white-clothed figure slowly appeared. A voice sighed with emotion. Pavilion Lord Xie is indeed a benevolent and righteous person. We didn't misjudge you. Xie Danqiong sternly said, please note that I'm only a temporary chief. I'm not the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's Pavilion Lord. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion's Pavilion Lord is someone else. He's my elder brother. There's a big difference between the two. Chapter 22:20. The man in white laughed. It's the same, it's the same. Xie Danqiong frowned and said, It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. Forget it, it's hard to talk about it. Let's not talk about this topic for the time being. Let's get back to the main topic. What can you teach me this time? How can we cooperate in this situation? He pointed, In this situation, I'm afraid that we can't even withdraw from the imperial city. If it's only the people of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, maybe it's fine. But how can we protect these people? The man in white said, This is your Heavenly Armament Pavilion's matter. How can we overstep our authority? Moreover, we absolutely believe that Chief Xie will have a way to deal with this matter. Xie Danqiong was silent for a moment. Then he said, I've already brought the people out for you. My people didn't make a move from the beginning to the end. And they didn't suffer any injuries either. But I've still helped you a lot. You can take these people with you. My Heavenly Armament Pavilion will withdraw from here as soon as possible. I can't joke around with the lives of tens of thousands of my people. The man in white frowned when he heard this. Xie Danqiong's decisiveness surprised him a little. The man in white thought for a moment and said, Chief Xie, there are some things that I'll make clear to you. First, these people are Meng Wuya's Dream Slayer army and their families. Now, the Dream Slayer army has been abolished. After this matter, these people have become Mo Yuntian's traitors. So, they can't go back. And it's not realistic for our forces to protect them. After all, we're being watched by many parties. Once they're discovered, they'll be implicated and die. Although we're not afraid, these people will die sooner or later. So, these people can only follow you for the time being. The man in white frankly looked at Xie Danqiong. We will think of a way to break you up into pieces. Moreover, we will send all of you 30,000 miles away to the mountains and valleys. That is where the Heavenly Armament Pavilion started. I believe that your excellency will have room to maneuver once you get there. Xie Danqiong's face was calm, but he didn't open his mouth to speak. He didn't say yes or no. In addition, we have already sent people to uproot the foundations of the two great sects that once followed the emperor to vent his anger. Of course, we have kept all the resources of those two great sections. In other words, those two bases, as long as your Heavenly Armament Pavilion is there, they will all be yours. This is a small reward. Also, I've also brought some gifts for Chief Xie. The man shook his hands and took out a string of spatial rings. There were at least 40 to 50 of them. Within each of these spatial rings, there are 20 similar spatial rings. In other words, there were a total of 1,000 interspatial rings, and there were 1 billion purple dawn coins in them. There are all kinds of treasures of heaven and earth, as well as all the equipment that belonged to the Dream Slayer army. There are also many healing herbs. I believe it will be enough to treat the injuries here. For this matter, we raided the warehouses of more than 10 pharmacies overnight and packed everything inside. In addition, there is a considerable amount of military inventory, weapons, and so on. This is our last token of appreciation to our 500,000 brothers. The man in white sighed deeply. However, we can only guarantee that you will be safely transferred to the mountain ravine base. Once you are there, we will not interfere with each other's business from then on. Even if we meet again in the future, we will only be strangers. Please, Chief Xie. The man in white bowed slightly. Although we are suspected of helping the enemy, we can't abandon our 500,000 brothers. This is also the last thing we can do for them. I'm ashamed that this is all we can do. It's enough. Xie Danqiong's heart was a little shaken. He was even deeply moved. The friendship between iron-blooded soldiers was indeed soul-stirring. Whether these people were wronged or framed, or whatever, there was one fact in the end. From now on, they would be strangers. And for these brothers who would become enemies in the future, they committed a shocking crime, overturned the prison of the Heavenly Court, slaughtered 200,000 people, and even delivered all the things they needed. Xie Danqiong suddenly had a kind of admiration for Mu Tianlan. No matter what happened in the future, Mu Tianlan deserved to be called a real man for being able to do this. He was loyal to his friends. Xie Danqiong heaved a long sigh of relief and said, "Okay, let's do this. I promise you. Then you must arrange people as soon as possible and send us out as soon as possible. Now that we are here, we are in fear every moment. This is not a good feeling. This is not a problem at all." The man in white laughed. At this point, the collusion between the military and the bandits had officially come to an end. From this moment on, Xie Danqiong had changed into a big force with millions of subordinates. From this moment on, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion had officially become a force that could influence Mo Yuntian's general trend. The Dream Slayer army had always been loyal to Mo Yuntian, but in the end, they were framed and betrayed. Everyone was inexplicably sad and indignant. Therefore, Xie Danqiong almost didn't encourage them. Everyone agreed to follow. However, when they left, hundreds of thousands of heroes cried together. It was extremely shocking. When they left, their old friends were their enemies. When they left, they couldn't go back to their former homes. The glory of the past had become a thing of the past. From now on, they had to carry the name of bandits, roaming the mountains and forests. Who could understand this kind of helplessness and sadness? Mo Yuntian was in chaos. Not only the imperial capital, but all the territories of Mo Yuntian were in chaos. As far as the eye could see, there were fast horses galloping everywhere. Spirit beasts galloped with people on their backs. Just because of a small and unknown heavenly armament pavilion not long ago, today's flames of war had filled the sky. Almost 1/3 of the army under General Mu Tianlan's command had been mobilized. Except for the troops stationed at the border, the rest were basically mobilized. In addition, General Yu Qi's army was also mobilized. It was the big movement of the Mo Yuntian military. Although they were all under the slogan of arrest, the former was actually assistance, while the latter was the real arrest. The two were diametrically opposite. Since the day the Dream Slayer army was removed, snow fell in the whole of Mo Yuntian, and it didn't stop for 10 days. But on this snowy day, Mo Yuntian's movements were frequent, like a raging fire. But in such a chaotic place, the original Dream Slayer army's officers and soldiers gathered from all over the country. They brought their own family members and threw themselves into a certain troop like a flood. Then they rolled forward with the troop. No one knew where they were going. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion led by Xie Danqiong, for the first time, enjoyed the wonderful taste of collusion between officials and bandits. They openly changed into military uniforms and mingled with the Mo Yuntian army. They meandered all the way to the south without any obstruction. They didn't even encounter a check. Occasionally, there would be a check. The leading officer would come forward and slap them in the face. Then they would rush out. No one dared to let out a fart. The injured even had carriages to sit in. They would recuperate along the way, occasionally chatting and joking. They would even gather in small groups to gamble and try their luck. If they drank a little wine, there would be nothing better in the world than this. Was this little day being encircled and suppressed? It was simply too joyful. The later this good life ended, the more ideal it was. Some members of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion were cheering in heaven. Motherfucker, if encircling and suppressing is like this, then they might as well encircle and suppress us every day. Come on, I'm not afraid. I'm looking forward to it 1,000 times. Xie Danqiong was full of melancholy. But at the same time, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He only felt that today was the most bizarre day in his life. With the title of the #1 bandit of Mo Yuntian that came out of nowhere, he drank and chatted with the important military figures. And this process was when the Mo Yuntian officials claimed that they were going all out to encircle and suppress him. This was simply too miraculous. Also, he saw that his own troop was getting bigger and bigger. Almost everyone was full of resentment towards the Missouri Yuntian Heavenly Court. Also, the military doctors were treating the wounded on his side along the way. As Xie Danqiong drank, he sighed. This really is? I'm not GMO, I don't know how to swear, but I still have to say it today. This really is a fucking dream. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. I feel so fucking good. Along the way, Marshal Mu's army and Marshal Yu's army constantly encountered each other. Whenever the two armies met, the scene was always explosive. There were no exceptions. The enemy army has temporarily stopped their march. We are going to search. Search your mother. You dare to swear? So what if I scold you? Old still wants to beat you. Motherfucker, you dare to try? I don't believe it. Not just Old, the brothers all dare. Come on, all of you, kill these sons of B** cheese and make them believe. Whoa, everyone fight back. They definitely are hiding traitors. Motherfucker. You motherfucking know how to slander people and quibble just like your Marshal you. Brothers, attack together. Kill these bastards. Kill you motherfucker. Kill you son of a bitch. Bastard son of a bitch. Watch my blade. Who motherfucking dares to sneak attack? If you are a man, come out with Old. The whole place was filled with foul air. Along the way, they had basically fought their way through like this. Everywhere they went, the mountains and forests would be destroyed beyond recognition. Then, both sides would report to their superiors, our army encountered the heavenly armament pavilion in a certain mountain and forest. We bravely killed the bandits and fought a chaotic battle. The battle was unprecedentedly tragic. How many people died? No one mentioned that the cause of the matter was internal strife. Of course, they didn't dare to mention it. So the heavenly armament pavilion became the scapegoat again and again. Chapter 22-21. The heavenly armament pavilion, which didn't have much strength, was praised time and time again. It was so powerful that it could shake the foundation of the entire Moyun sky. It was really inconsistent with the facts. However, Xie Danqiong was still very happy to be the scapegoat. The heavenly armament pavilion was simply too awesome. Everywhere they went, they were victorious, and they were invincible. Although the real heavenly armament pavilion had never made a move or fought a battle, they were still singing songs of victory all the way. Once they were famous, wouldn't they come from everywhere? It was good to lean against a big tree for shade. Everyone knew this principle. When the time came, he would just have to wait to receive more experts as his subordinates. Although there were a lot of headaches, in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Most of the injured had basically recovered. However, they had already reached the border. If they walked forward for another 2,000 miles, they would reach the heavenly armament pavilion. It was also the old site of the two super sections. At the same time, it was also the destination of this trip. Xie Danqiong and the people of the heavenly armament pavilion solemnly bid farewell to the escorting army. Although they weren't close brothers, they were friends who drank and slept together. Thank you. Everyone has worked hard escorting us all this way. Thank you. In the future, our brothers will rely on Head Xie's care. Take care. Have a safe journey. In the future, when we meet again, we won't be friends. Swords are merciless, soldiers and bandits are strangers. We won't be merciless. Please. Please. Both sides left in tears. Especially when the officers and soldiers of the Dream Slayer army said goodbye to their former comrades, the scene was filled with tears. Those who wanted to stay were crying, and those who wanted to go back were also crying. In the end, the army under Mu Tianlan's command flattened 7 or 8 mountains as if they were venting their anger. They killed the trees in the forest, deliberately creating an unprecedentedly tragic battlefield. They looked on helplessly as their former brothers, their loyal and devoted brothers who had gone through fire and water with them, were forced to rebel. From then on, they would be enemies, and it would be difficult for them to be friends again. Each and every one of them found it difficult to suppress the grief in their hearts. Just like that, they cut themselves again and again. They let their blood drip on this land, to prove that this was once a battlefield, even though no one would come to inspect the battlefield in detail. However, they were using this method to vent the grief and sorrow in their hearts. Xie Danqiong put away his melancholy as he watched the army leave. He waved his hand and led his troops into the mountains. All the soldiers who belonged to the Dream Slayer army would settle down in this place. Their families would also settle down in this place. The heavenly armament pavilion's strength would rise from this moment onwards. A white-clothed man was standing on a treetop somewhere far away. He was watching Xie Danqiong's troops withdraw into the mountains. He faintly sighed. Then he soared up and flew back at an extremely fast speed. Thoughts surged along the way. No one was clearer than him that from now on, in the black cloud sky, a superpower had truly risen, Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Under the crazy leadership of Xie Danqiong, once this force was fully fledged, it would truly possess the tyrannical ability to sweep through the entire ink cloud sky. And the most fatal thing was that this new force had a complicated relationship with the current Mo Yuntian military, and their relationship had a deeper foundation. Between each other, there were many things that they could not let go of. In the future, it would be more and more difficult to deal with. However, the current situation had forced everyone to this point. What could they do? This was the biggest foundation of this army. A terrifying force that could be expected in the future. It was growing strong. The future, no one could predict. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion had already retreated into the mountains. They temporarily laid down their flags and ceased their drums. They were recuperating and gradually growing stronger. And the turmoil in the entire black cloud sky had just started. The internal strife of the two military pillars, it did not stop because of the disappearance of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Instead, it became more and more intense. Both sides were now red-eyed. They fought until they were red-eyed. They killed until they were red-eyed. The manpower of these two sides slowly evolved from normal attack and defense to all kinds of despicable means. They used every means to scheme against each other. As for Heavenly Emperor Mo Yuan Tianjia's attitude was extremely ambiguous. He turned a blind eye to the fight between the two sides. Occasionally, he would also participate in it. Every time he said something, it would make Mu Tianlan's side very uncomfortable. In the entire black cloud sky, the two military forces were like two fierce tigers, launching the most intense confrontation. After Xie Danqiong retreated into the mountains, he immediately issued the highest order. All the personnel were to be separated, regrouped, and a new commander was appointed. There had to be a process for the new people to integrate with the original team. Moreover, the newcomers were basically all elites. This was a very important point. Just for this, Xie Danqiong racked his brains. He could not let his old brothers feel left out, and he could not let the new people feel excluded. He had to make the best use of people. Xie Danqiong thoroughly felt the difficulties of Chu Yang and Mo Tianji at that time. This was not a job that humans could do. If the brothers were still together now, that would be great. Xie Danqiong looked up to the sky and sighed. If it was really like that, why would I have to do this kind of dirty work? I only need to drink and chat with GMO and Luo Kadi, and Mo Tianji can do it alone. This was one of the reasons. The second was to choose a new place to settle down. This was originally the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's main camp on the surface. But Xie Danqiong did not dare to place all the forces here. After all, there were too many people here who knew. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. It was very necessary. The most terrifying enemy in this world is the enemy that cannot be found. This was something that Chu Yang had said very seriously. Xie Danqiong was very sure of this and firmly remembered it. He had always adhered to this principle. If there were too many people, it was impossible to not be found. But Xie Danqiong could choose to scatter. There was no need to be afraid of many people as long as there was enough space. And the scattered places had to have a certain degree of concealment. Even if there was a day when they were attacked, they would not be wiped out in one go. Putting all the food in a single pot, that was the real way to die. As long as they were not wiped out in one go, no matter who it was, they would have to consider the severe consequences of poking the hornet's nest. The joint revenge of millions of experts was enough to make anyone in the world restless. Then, Xie Danqiong started to train the troops without stopping. I have a premonition that a great era of turmoil in the imperial court is coming. So we have to be prepared before the turmoil in the imperial court arrives. Moreover, our boss, the real master of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, has already started the countdown. We have to work harder and give our boss a big surprise when he arrives. Xie Danqiong's eyes were shining when he said this, flashing with heartfelt expectation. Come quickly, I will be free when you come. Oh God, what kind of days have I been through all this time? One of his subordinates asked in confusion. Chief, who is your boss? Xie Danqiong smiled. My boss is a peerless character. When he was young, he overturned 2 big countries. When he was young, he had already rushed into the imperial court of heaven. He has always been invincible. He has never failed in his attacks. He has never failed in his calculations. He has trillions of soldiers in his mind. He is the #1 superhero in the world. Now that they were familiar with each other, someone boldly asked, could it be that the boss is really more powerful than the chief? It can't be, right? It's really hard to imagine. You are making a fuss because you have not seen much. What am I? Xie Danqiong snorted. 10 of me, even 100 of me may not be able to compare to one boss. Xie Danqiong was very serious and cautious when he said these words. Although the brothers have not arrived yet, the image of the brothers must be established. These words made everyone in the heavenly armament pavilion of Mo excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Who was Xie Danqiong? In the heavenly armament pavilion of Mo there was no one like him. He had been barehanded all the way, and his cultivation had soared to become a legendary figure. He had been alone, and now he had millions of soldiers and horses. He had become the leader of a superforce that could control the situation of the world. Xie Danqiong's journey had only taken a little more than a year's time. This kind of battle record, no matter where it was, would be an out-and-out legend. Since ancient times, how many people like him had there been in the imperial court of heaven? And Xie Danqiong obviously did not have a big force behind him. But that boss whom they had never met was actually 10 times or 100 times more powerful than Xie Danqiong. What kind of perverted person would that be? Although this statement was more or less exaggerated, but since the leader had said so and praised him so highly, then this mysterious boss's boss would definitely not be that bad. Could it be that the boss's boss is a super character like Di Yi's descendant? Someone was quick-witted and asked with a salivating face. To be so powerful, he must be a character of this level, right? Xie Danqiong laughed. Your guess is almost there. Although boss is not the descendant of Di, he is not inferior to them. In fact, he is even more powerful. I will never doubt this, I will only firmly believe it. The whole place was in an uproar. 2 words suddenly flashed in everyone's mind. Saint. Xie Danqiong smiled slightly. He did not comment on this judgment, leaving only a huge mystery. In Xie Danqiong's heart, he really wanted to say, even if he is a saint, he is nothing compared to my boss. But he knew that this sentence could not be said, at least not for the time being. Right now, he could only stop before going too far. It was enough to boost the morale. But if he said that sentence, it would become a complete boast in everyone's eyes. No one would believe it. Looking at Xie Danqiong's mysterious smile, the people of the heavenly armament pavilion were shocked to the point of numbness. Chapter 22:22. Everyone's heart was shocked to the point of numbness. They only felt that heavenly thunder was rumbling above their heads. Could it be that Big Boss's big boss was actually the Lord? Oh my God! It's not just Big Brother. I have many brothers. I'm only ranked first among my brothers. Xie Danqiong dropped another bombshell. Our ranking is based on intelligence, strength, breadth of mind, and so on. Xie Danqiong said, one of us brothers is invincible with his sword. There was another person who, with a saber in hand, could face the entire heaven palace alone. There is another person who can calculate everything under the heavens and see through the mysteries of heaven. And Xie Danqiong's expression was full of nostalgia, seriousness, and emotion when he said these words. At this moment, I really miss you guys. But it was this outpouring of emotion that made everyone who heard these words believe without a doubt. Without experience, it was impossible to fabricate something out of thin air. The heavenly armament pavilion was suddenly in an uproar. Boss's boss. Boss's brother. Boss is back. Boss is back. All of this was like a gust of wind, blowing through the hearts of everyone in the heavenly armament pavilion. It became the topic of conversation after dinner or late at night. Everyone was guessing, but the more they guessed, the more they admired him, and the more they admired him, the more loyal they were to him. The first snow of this winter in Yuntian was rarely seen in 10,000 years. During this period of time, the snowfall was either big or small, but it never stopped. It actually continued for more than 40 days. However, no matter how long the snowfall lasted, there would be an end to it. The battle between the two major military forces lasted for more than 40 days. It was a sunny day after the heavy snow. The three figures left the palace like ghosts, ignoring the chaos in Yuntian. In a flash, they had already soared into the sky. Then, 3 streaks of light slowly rose into the sky, and the 3 people disappeared without a trace. Marshall's residence. Mu Tianlan looked at the 3 disappearing rainbows in the sky and sighed deeply. He muttered to himself, of His Majesty's 5 great bodyguards, 3 of them were killed in one breath. How can Wuxia escape from such a thunderous situation? The heavens are going to kill him. Behind him, the gloomy figure appeared again and said, Marshal, 3 of His Majesty's 5 personal bodyguards were sent out at once. I'm afraid General Meng will definitely die this time. Unless we intervene. Mu Tianlan was silent for a moment and said, We can't interfere anymore. The 2 of you are too familiar with each other. You will be able to recognize each other the moment you make a move. If that happens, it will truly be a disaster for us. I really didn't expect His Majesty to place so much importance on the enmity of the Crown Prince. He won't stop until he exterminates all his enemies. Shadow sighed. There's something you don't know. Speaking of which, this Grand Empress came when His Majesty was old. The other Grand Empresses had already been crowned as kings and had many grandchildren. Only this Grand Empress was nurtured by His Majesty in the past many years. This affection is naturally hard to erase. Mu Tianlan let out a long sigh. That's why he has been spoiled into such a lawless state. With what he has done, he is simply courting death. Even death can't wipe out his hatred. Shadow curled his lips. Don't say such things again in the future. Mu Tianlan said deeply. Shadow said, Yes, but how should we deal with this matter? Mu Tianlan's face twitched painfully. Sigh, if you make a move again, it's tantamount to declaring war on His Majesty. This is absolutely not feasible. Right now, we can only hope that Wuxia is blessed by the heavens. At this point, Shadow also fell silent. Yes, they could no longer make a move on this matter. Now, not to mention that the internal dispute within the military was at its fiercest, the degree of familiarity with each other had already restricted them from making a move. If there were many people involved in the battle, they might still be able to find a chance to fish in troubled waters. But now, there were only 3 people making a move. The situation was simple and clear, so there was really no other way. Once they were recognized, then Mu Tianlan's entire military group was bound to be suppressed and collapsed in an instant. Even Mu Tianlan would be in a worrying situation, and might even be defeated. Yuan Tianji could tolerate Mu Tianlan and use prolonged battle, but he absolutely could not tolerate anyone challenging his authority. This was the bottom line of a ruler and a subject. We can only hope that the heavens will help old Meng. Shadow also sighed. Although they said so, the 2 of them were only pessimistic in their hearts. This time, with the 3 great guards working together, even if Meng Wuxia had the ability to reach the heavens, his chances of survival were also very slim. Every celestial emperor must be accompanied by 7 great guards. These 7 great guards were known as the 7-star guards. At that time, the ones who competed for the position of celestial emperor were these people. Before everyone started to compete for the position of celestial emperor, they all made a heavenly oath. The winner is the king. The loser is the king's guard. When the great celestial emperor stood out, the others also kept their promise and became the 7-star guards. This matter was set in motion. They were born a long time ago, and after that, Emperor One and Empress had a common tacit understanding to hide the fact that these people existed. Only people with considerable qualifications could know of their existence. They were basically the secret forces that belonged to a celestial emperor. This force was extremely powerful, almost enough to shake any power in the world. The martial strength of each of these 7 people had to at least reach the level of a high-level saint. Among these people, the vast majority were close to the level of a peak saint. As long as they appeared, it was equivalent to representing the peak battle strength under Emperor 1 and Empress. There was no one else. Looking at this world, perhaps there were still some people who could have similar cultivation as them, but, taking everything into account, in the entire Heaven Imperial Court, they could not find so many people. Often, in addition to making these people their own personal guards, each celestial emperor would assign them to their trusted ministers to be responsible for their life and safety. Of the 7 great guards of Celestial Emperor Inkcloud, Yuan Tianji, one was assigned to His Highness the Great Emperor, and the other was assigned to Prime Minister Yi Luoyue. As for the remaining 5, they were all used to protect the imperial palace. It was rumored that when the Celestial Emperor went out on a grand occasion, 10,000 places would worship him when he was still, and 7 kings would accompany him when he was moving. Everyone thought that the 7 kings accompanying him was just a metaphor, but in reality, it was really 7 kings. Former kings. And because Mu Tianlan already had Shadow, this super expert, by his side, Yuan Tianji did not assign him any additional tasks. Shadow was Mu Tianlan's sworn brother. Although he did not belong to the 7 great guards, his true strength was not inferior to any of those people. This time, in order to deal with Chu Yang and Meng Wuxia, Yuan Tianji sent out 3 people at once. This scale was the first time in the history of Inkcloud Sky. Meng Wuxia was at most a primary saint. How could he resist the joint attack of these 3 people? Therefore, Mu Tianlan and Ing could only let out a sigh of relief. In these few months, Xie Danqiong was so busy that his heels did not touch the ground, but he did not know that Chu Yang was similarly busy. Not to mention other things, he almost did not even have time to find Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian for dual cultivation. It was not that Chu Yang was too busy, but the 2 girls were too busy. It was all because everything had to start from scratch, and there were many things waiting to be done. People had to be trained, and they had to seize the time. They had to break in, have tacit understanding, and reorganize. They had to spend money and make money. Chu Yang, on the other hand, used an extremely secret method to spread the new version of the super heavy pill among his subordinates. This allowed everyone to improve at a godly speed and make rapid progress. Recently, Luohua City seemed to have become a place where lightning flashed and thunder roared overnight. It was really very unusual. In the past, Luohua City was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and the wind and rain were favorable. There was no scene of thunder and lightning at all. Often, it might not even happen once in a few years. However, since Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion was established, after about a month, suddenly, there were people breaking through almost every day. Naturally, the lightning flashed and thunder roared in Luohua City. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was permanent. During those days, there were people who had to bear the heavenly punishment almost every day. At most, there would be more than 10 or 20 people breaking through in a day. Often, lightning flashed and thunder roared continuously for several days. Such a terrifying scene made the indigenous warriors of Luohua City widen their eyes and drop their jaws to the ground. How could this be? This was too illogical, inconceivable, and inconceivable. In the past 100 years, it was quite rare to have a breakthrough that led to the heavenly punishment. Moreover, the clan that produced the master would have a big celebration. But now, why are there so many high-level heavenly punishments raining down from the sky? What exactly is going on? Was this a joke? When did the heavenly punishment become as common as cabbages? This made the newly risen Heavenly Armament Pavilion inexplicably more mysterious in Demon Emperor Heaven. It was said everywhere in Jianghu that as long as you joined Heavenly Armament Pavilion, you could break through the existing martial arts shackles and reach the sky in one step. It was no longer a delusion. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion had mysterious experts, priceless elixirs and secret manuals, and experienced experts to instruct them, With so many advantages, you would be embarrassed if you did not break through. Wasn't it? As a result, more and more martial artists wanted to join the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. And the warriors who were already in Heavenly Armament Pavilion were even more motivated. Now, everyone was risking their lives to torture themselves. Look, just because they worked a little harder than us, they were originally at the same level as us. Now, they have been promoted and entered the Saint Armament Advanced Barracks. That person has entered the Heavenly Human Barracks. What about us? Although we have made some progress, overall, we are still in the same place. There is no essential breakthrough. This is not good. Chapter 22-23. If you want to improve, how can you do it without risking your life? Before this, each and every one of them had complained about the so-called extreme training. But now, their eyes were shining. If they didn't torment themselves to death every day, they wouldn't be able to live with it. It wasn't just a matter of promotion, there was also a basic problem of face. Others have promoted, but you don't promote yourself. Damn, why are you so useless? You must be thinking about something else and not working hard enough. Could it be that he was just going to watch his former underlings become his leaders? Riding on top of your head and acting like a tyrant? How can this be justified? Absolutely unbearable. This was related to a man's face, and it was infinitely serious. Therefore, they worked harder and harder every day, and more people broke through every day. It stimulated the remaining people to the point that their eyes turned red, and they naturally became fiercer and fiercer. Chu Yang was extremely busy during this period of time. But he was also very busy in his heart. Every day, he would secretly add a lot of elixirs to everyone's food. He wanted to ensure that these people wouldn't overdo their training and kill themselves. Moreover, they were full of vigor. There were no aftereffects. However, there was one time when Chu Yang was a little careless and added twice the amount of elixirs at once. This time, it was incredible. After eating and drinking, this group of people were full of energy, and they didn't care about anything else. They continued to train until they were full of energy, and they couldn't stop at all. After that day, the ground of the entire Heavenly Armament Pavilion had been trampled by these guys for nearly 10 feet. The so-called 1 meter higher sky was just like this. No, even if it was 3 times higher, it wouldn't be enough. 3 times was only 1 foot. This result scared Chu Yang. These people were all talented people, and if they were really too excited, what would happen? Fortunately, the heavens still took care of these people, and none of them were really too excited. Moreover, the effect was very obvious. After one day, this group of people had broken through, and there were actually more than 50 people. However, Chu Yang didn't dare to be greedy anymore. This time, fortunately, nothing happened. If the intensity of the training was lower, perhaps some people would really explode. That would be big trouble. Not to mention the fact that all the secrets had been revealed, but he still felt heartache over the loss of his own people. Wouldn't that be equivalent to losing elixirs and people? Apart from Chu Yang, Tai Butian, and Wu Qianxian, who were very busy, the other hall masters were also very busy. For example, Meng Wuya was so busy that he was badly battered. Now, this primary level saint had to run when he walked. But because he was so busy, Meng Wuya's previously depressed mood had improved a lot. At the very least, it was no longer as painful as before. Another thing worth mentioning was the divine soul of the calamity. Ever since the divine soul of calamity arrived here, he had been sighing and drooping his head because there wasn't enough death energy here for him to absorb. Or to be more precise, there was basically no death energy for him to absorb. There were very few powerful warriors in Luohua City. Just by looking at the Tang family, one could see that they had dominated this place for hundreds of thousands of years. But it was also because of this that there were relatively few killings in this place. It could be said that this place was the most peaceful place in the whole Heaven Imperial Court. People would like such an environment very much. But souls, especially the divine soul of calamity, didn't like it at all. If it weren't for Chu Yang by his side, who could provide him with the purest dead spirit energy from time to time, he might not have been able to stay here any longer. Even so, he was still dispirited, and didn't have the slightest bit of energy. Since the sword spirit left, the divine soul of calamity had become Chu Yang's new super trump card. Seeing him like this, Chu Yang finally couldn't help but say, "You are too stupid, aren't you? You are one of the few tyrannical existences in the world. How can you be so stupid? When people die, there will be death energy, but when other lives die, there won't be death energy. Divine soul, you are too narrow-minded." "What do you mean?" The divine soul of calamity's eyes lit up when he heard this. He vaguely felt that Chu Yang's words were very reasonable, or that he was opening up a limitless new path for him. But he still couldn't figure out where exactly it was. "That's why I say that your thinking is rigid. I have said it so clearly. In my opinion, this Luohua city is actually the best place for you to cultivate. It's just that you haven't realized it yet." Chu Yang pointed to the falling flowers that were everywhere in the sky. When people die, death energy is born. When life withers, death energy is born. Every flower here is a life. When these flowers wither, there will be loss, reluctance, and sadness. Aren't these also a kind of death energy? The divine soul of calamity trembled all over. Looking at the falling flowers in the sky, he suddenly became completely speechless. He stood there for a long time without moving. He seemed to have thought of something. The withering of flowers may be the real withering of life. This is the pure death energy that can be derived from the spirits of heaven and earth. And it is not as full of hostility as the death energy of human beings, which disturbs one's state of mind. I think you should think about it carefully. Before Chu Yang finished speaking, the divine soul of calamity had already disappeared. Half a month later, the divine soul of calamity came to Chu Yang happily. As soon as he saw Chu Yang, he gave Chu Yang a big bear hug. "Little ancestor, you are the savior of my life. I love you so much. You really saved my life. You showed me the way, opened my eyes, and illuminated my future. I love you so much." Chu Yang was creeped out. He struggled hard to break free. "What's wrong? What's wrong with you? Are you possessed?" The death energy derived from the withering of flowers is really wonderful. It is the future that I have been looking for a long time. The divine soul of calamity was exultant. Every flower, when it withers, indeed has the death energy. And it is really the death energy of the withering of life. It is far purer than the death energy derived from the death of human beings. Although the death aura from flowers is relatively weak, and it takes about 1,000 flowers to be equivalent to the death aura from one person's death, there are many of them. Every day, there are hundreds of billions of petals that wither. This number is simply too huge. In addition, the death aura of the flowers is not only purer, but more importantly, it has no resentment or evil aura. It is the most suitable cultivation resource for my generation. Moreover, it has the ability to purify and eliminate the evil aura accumulated from my original cultivation. Didn't you save my life? The divine soul of calamity's eyes were brimming with tears. Yes, if there were tears. Save your life? Isn't this a bit exaggerated? You are a saint-level expert. Chu Yang expressed his surprise. Although he had expected that the withering of flowers might inspire a new path for the divine soul of calamity, it shouldn't be so exaggerated, right? This is something you don't know. The divine soul of calamity is a special existence that does not belong to life, death, or reincarnation. It is because of the huge amount of hostility accumulated over hundreds of millions of years. In this life, although it is powerful, it can only be a lonely ghost. However, after the malice is purified in this place, there is still room for significant improvement in my cultivation. As long as I reach a higher level and resolve the malice that has lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, it will be possible for me to reconstruct my body and become a real human being again. The soul of the calamity spoke incoherently. He could not have been more excited. The divine soul of calamity stuttered for a long time before Chu Yang finally understood. So it was like this. No matter how powerful and omnipotent one was, whenever one faced human or life, the divine soul of calamity's indescribable inferiority from the bottom of his heart always existed. Who didn't want to be an upright person? who was willing to be a divine soul that could only survive in the land of darkness forever. Being terrifying and sinister was definitely a method that could make the enemy tremble in fear. However, if it could be done openly, who would be willing to be terrifying and sinister? Besides, the divine soul of calamity also had its limits. Once it reached its limits, the punishment of heaven and earth would be to vanish like smoke and clouds. An Chu Yang's idea, which was more or less nonsense, unexpectedly solved the divine soul of calamity's puzzling problem. It gave him hope that he could be a human again. How could he not be excited? After knowing this, Chu Yang also couldn't help but feel happy for the divine soul of calamity. After the first heavy snow of early winter, Yao Ningning brought the Hu and Ma elders, as well as Bai Shixian, on the way back to the Demon Imperial City. The Demon Empress' birthday was celebrated by the entire Demon Imperial Heaven. As a human, Yao Ningning naturally had to go back. As for Bai Shixian, she followed the Grand Elder to get the Fox clan's inheritance. The little girl followed along excitedly. "Little girl, don't forget what I said." Before Chu Yang left, he reminded Yao Ningning. For the Demon Empress' birthday this time, Chu Yang also gave a generous gift. Whether it was out of respect for his seniors or because it was the birthday of his brother's mother, this gift had to be given. Logically speaking, he should go personally. However, the Demon Empress' birthday did not allow outsiders to be present, so he could only give up. "Don't worry." Yao Ningning patted her chest. "If my mother doesn't agree, I'll threaten her with suicide. She'll definitely give in. This trick of mine works every time, and it works every time." Chu Yang's face darkened. For the Demon Empress to have such a son, it was really a great tribulation for this world's top experts. If she didn't agree, she would threaten with suicide. This was truly a peerless and ruthless move that made people concede defeat. Yao Ningning was reluctant to leave, but he laughed and left. 100,000, wait for me. I will be back soon. Let's meet again in the martial world. Even if an unconventional person was more shrewd sometimes, he would still say unconventional things in a suitable situation. So, a fool would always be a fool. This was true. "I dare to bet with you." When he saw Yao Ningning, Bai Shixian and the others leave, Tan Tan was so excited that his eyebrows danced. "What bet?" Chu Yang asked curiously. Because after the previous incident, a certain demon king had been taught a lesson by a certain female demon king. It seemed that he had not dared to talk about the word bet for a long time. What was going on today? "I bet that when the two of them come back, they will definitely be a couple," Tan Tan said confidently, looking at the backs of Yao Ningning and Bai Shixian. Chapter 22-24. Get lost. Chu Yang said angrily, "Do I need you to tell me this? Are you playing with nonsense? The two of them are already flirting with each other now." During this period of time, Yao Ningning had completely given up on Zi Xiecheng. Firstly, Zi Xiecheng's heart belonged to someone else, and it was his boss Chu Yang. How would Yao Ningning dare to be rash? Secondly, ever since he saw Zi Xiecheng's violence, Yao Ningning had nightmares even in his dreams. He dreamed that he married Zi Xiecheng and was played with as a sandbag every day. This was really a man's nightmare. Who would be willing to be beaten by his wife like a sandbag every day? While Yao Ningning's hair stood on end, his worship of Chu Yang was even greater. Only his boss would be able to bear it. Therefore, Yao Ningning turned his attention to Bai Shixian, whom he already had a good impression of. Every day, he attentively waited on her. Bai Shixian was originally a little ignorant of worldly affairs. Under Yao Ningning's relentless attacks, her heart naturally felt a little like a little girl's vanity. Therefore, as time went by, there was a tendency for them to fall into the enemy's hands. Chu Yang saw all of this. Why would he make such a bet with Tan Tan that he would definitely lose? He also understood why this guy was in such a hurry to make a bet with him today. To make a bet that he would definitely win, anyone would want to make a bet. "Oh right, what were you doing last night? Why did you make such a big commotion?" Chu Yang narrowed his eyes, his face full of doubts and suspicions. "Nothing." Tan Tan was actually a little bashful, which was rare for him. If you didn't do anything, why did you scream last night? It was as if you were killing something. Chu Yang's face was full of gossip. Get lost. If you ask me again, I'll fall out with you. Tan Tan's face was red, and he turned around and left. The way he walked was completely like a big crab with broad steps. It looked very strange. Chu Yang was stunned for a while, and suddenly seemed to have understood something. He held his stomach and laughed. A snowball was rolled to the size of a millstone by Tan Tan, and it smashed towards him. What are you laughing at? Chu Yang laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. He already understood the specific reason now. Yesterday morning, Xie Danfeng had come to Tai but Ian hesitantly to ask about this matter. Moreover, she had said that it had to be kept strictly confidential. In the end, after Tai but Ian heard it, she laughed so hard that she couldn't care less about her manners. She turned around and told the gossip to Zidan Wu Qianqian. Then, Wu Qianqian accidentally told Chu Yang. The matter was like this. Tan Tan had felt that the time was ripe the night before yesterday. Moreover, he had been living with Xie Danfeng for a long time. So, he had become somewhat restless. She then asked Xie Danfeng, "Are we pregnant?" My senior brother's child is already old enough to buy soy sauce, but I'm lagging behind by a lot. Xie Danfeng was startled when she heard this. I don't know. Why isn't it here yet? Tan Tan was a bit impatient. Say, how long have we been sleeping on the same bed? Why haven't we had a child yet? Xie Danfeng was a little surprised by his words. That's right. This shouldn't be the case. Both of our bodies should be in good health. The two of them studied for a whole night, but they still didn't have the slightest clue. Yes, the two of them had been eating and living together. However, it had already started since they were in the Chongtian continent. So, why hadn't there been any news until now? In the morning, Xie Danfeng came to Tai but Ian with dark circles under her eyes and asked, "Why can't we have a child?" Tai but Ian was also confused by this question. Although she was an experienced person, she still didn't know much about certain matters regarding virginity. The two women buried their heads and studied for a long time, but they still couldn't figure it out. However, in the end, Tai but Ian accidentally discovered that Xie Danfeng was still a virgin. She was dumbfounded on the spot. Since she hadn't lost her virginity, how could she have a child? How could she ask such an idiotic question? Tai but Ian was at a loss about this. She vaguely suspected that Tan Tan was actually very unlucky. She couldn't help but ask. Xie Danfeng stammered about this. She blushed for a long time before she spoke. It turned out that these two idiots had always thought that as long as they slept on the same bed, they would be husband and wife. As long as a man and a woman slept on the same bed, they should have a child. Therefore, the two of them had always slept peacefully on the same bed, snoring on their own. Well water didn't interfere with the river water. How could they have a child like this? Tai but Ian burst out laughing on the spot. Even her tears had burst out because of her excessive laughter. This kind of weirdo was really rare in the world. Xie Danfeng listened and laughed uneasily. After she understood the situation, she went back as if she was fleeing for her life. The pitiful girl only now knew that if she wanted to have a child, she couldn't have one just by sleeping together. That still required other basic steps. Therefore, that night, Tan Tan asked in high spirits, "Did you ask? What's going on?" Xie Danfeng got angry from the bottom of her heart. So, she became bold. Moreover, she was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. She thought that this guy had made her lose face. So, she angrily grabbed Tan Tan's vital part. Then, she ferociously twisted it and roared, "You call yourself a divine master of love? You don't even understand the most basic things. This thing of yours has never shown its power. Where did the child come from? Perhaps Xie Danfeng used too much strength. After all, she was still a little girl. So, she didn't know how to control her strength." Tan Tan was caught off guard. He let out a miserable howl on the spot. Then, he curled up like a shrimp and rolled on the bed endlessly. It really hurt to death. Even a great demon king would be no different from an ordinary man in that place. At most, it would be a little more powerful. But, it certainly wouldn't be able to resist being pinched. Of course, This kind of twisting was even more unbearable. Xie Danfeng couldn't help but jump in fright when she saw this. But she also knew that she had accidentally injured Tan Tan, so Tan Tan didn't have any serious problems after the two of them did this. But they reckoned that he wouldn't be able to do that for a short period of time. Well, he needs to recuperate in this kind of situation. Therefore, although the two of them now understood how to have a child, they couldn't do anything for a short time. Of course, the effect would have been instantaneous if Tan Tan had asked Chu Yang for a heavy pill. In fact, he would have recovered on the same day. However, Tan Tan didn't have enough time to conceal this matter. So, how could he say it out loud? At that time, if Chu Yang really asked, "What do you want a heavy pill for?" wouldn't Tan Tan be immediately dumbfounded and ashamed to show his face? To think that he was a great demon king. To think that he had always boasted of being a saint in destroying flowers. After all this time, he actually didn't even understand the most crucial step. In fact, he was just a little virgin who couldn't be any whiter. It was really too shameful. Great demon King Tan really couldn't afford to lose this person. Fortunately, his little brother Yao Ningning was no longer nearby. If he knew, Tan Tan probably wouldn't have the face to live. So, at this moment, when he heard Chu Yang's question, Tan Tan exploded on the spot. Chu Yang worked so hard for so long. Finally, he found such a joke. How could he let it go? Naturally, he would ask Tan Tan every few days, "Junior brother, how is it?" After a few times, Tan Tan even had the impulse to run away from home. He didn't know if the internal strife would be contagious. The internal strife in Mo Yuntian's military was fierce, and there was also internal strife in Luohua City. However, the target of the internal strife wasn't Chu Yang's heavenly armament pavilion, but the Tang clan. During this period of time, the Tang clan had three internal strife. On one hand, they agreed to move, and on the other hand, they agreed not to move. Then they quarreled. But in the end, the Tang clan's third young master directly threatened them with death. Finally, they used the most shameless and extreme method to stop the clan's base from moving. This guy felt that Chu Yang's words were too reasonable. The Tang clan could develop until now completely because of good feng shui. So he didn't hesitate to fight with his family at all costs. But the price he paid for this persistence was, the Tang clan's eldest young master said, "You don't have to move and can stay where you are, but you have to build a new courtyard on your own, located in the south of the city." But to build a new team was easier said than done. Not to mention other things, where would the basic funds come from? That was a considerable amount of money. In other words, if you, Tang Yangwei, want the Tang clan to not move, fine. You can build one on your own. Of course, the prerequisite is that you don't use the clan's money. The Tang clan's third young master was enraged. He patted his thin chest on the spot and promised generously, "I will build one on my own. And I will guarantee that I will build it and not let anyone down. I will contribute to the prosperity of my Tang clan for hundreds of millions of years." Who doesn't know how to boast? But what if you can't build it? The Tang clan's eldest young master pressed. "I will definitely build it." The Tang clan's third young master's face turned red. He didn't give in at all. "I also believe that you can build it. No matter who you give 10,000 years, anyone can build it. Even a cat or a dog won't have a problem." The Tang clan's eldest young master squinted. "I can build a new courtyard in 3 years." The Tang clan's third young master flew into a rage. 3 years? Don't brag, there's no dust here. The Tang clan's eldest young master snorted disdainfully. "If you can build it in 3 years, I won't fight with you for the position of clan master in the future. But what if you can't build it in 3 years? If I can't build it in 3 years, I will withdraw from the core of the clan and won't fight with you for anything. And I won't fucking be called Tang Yangwei anymore. I will change my name to True Impotence." The Tang clan's third young master's face turned red. He pointed to the heavens and swore. "It's a promise. It's a promise. Let's make a promise. Let's make a promise. Let's make a promise." Come. Clap, clap. They had rushed all the way here. The two brothers were quarreling like fighting cocks. Sentence after sentence, no one could get a word in edgewise. The surrounding people didn't seem to have the time to persuade them. The two of them had already made a promise. And don't be evil. The clap, here wasn't referring to the Tang clan's third young master and his brother having sex. It was the Tang clan's third young master and his brother clapping their palms together. Clap, to make a promise. In the next moment, this promise was actually recognized by the heavenly Tao. It was officially established and there was no going back on it. Chapter 22-25. Then, the Tang family's eldest young master looked at his third brother with a smile that wasn't a smile. Third brother, this bet has already been set. You can't go back on your word. If you go back on your word, I won't even need to find trouble with you. The higher-ups will directly find trouble with you. To establish a Tang family-side courtyard that is not inferior to the Tang family in 3 years, this task is still a bit difficult. Big brother, I wish you success in advance. Work hard and do your best. The Tang family's third young master suddenly regained his senses. His head was extremely feverish, and his heart was immediately thrown into a river of gold thread. In an instant, his intestines were green with regret. How was he going to deal with this matter? Wanting to establish such a large side courtyard in 3 years was simply a fantasy. It was a completely impossible task. How was he going to accomplish it? But he had already clapped his hands as an oath. Even if he wanted to go back on his word, it was impossible. The Tang family's third young master wanted to cry, but no tears came out. But when he saw the Tang family's complacent expression, he could only grit his teeth and swallow his blood. Just wait and see. I will definitely succeed. When he said those words, his heart was dripping blood. I'll succeed? I'll succeed your ass. It would be strange if I could succeed. This elder brother will wait and see. The Tang family's eldest young master laughed loudly as he walked out. His face was filled with complacency. Then, the Tang family's third young master sat down on the ground. He slapped his thigh and sighed. I'm really stupid, But he immediately realized that there were countless spectators around. He immediately jumped up and said smugly, Isn't it just a Tang family-side courtyard? Isn't this easy? To this young master, it's a piece of cake. What's so difficult about it? As he said that, he hummed a little tune and walked out of the door. Everyone in the room had their jaws dropped to the ground. This fellow, even if his face was slapped until it was as swollen as a pig's head, he still wanted to be fat. Everyone wanted to see how this guy would be able to complete this impossible task in 3 years. As soon as the Tang family's third young master stepped out of the door, his 2 long legs turned into noodles as he wailed, How could I be so stupid? I was led into a ditch by someone with just a few words. 3 years, my God, 3 years to establish a courtyard that is not inferior to the Tang family. Oh God, please strike me with lightning. Then he wiped his tears and rolled his eyes. That's right. A hero needs 3 helpers. I'd better hurry and find Chu Yang to think of a solution. That's the most important thing. In an instant, the Tang family's third young master rushed towards the heavenly armament pavilion like a galloping horse that had been cut by a knife. His speed was extremely fast. What's so difficult about such a small matter? Chu Yang patted his chest and said, Isn't it just some money? Brother, don't worry. I can't guarantee anything else, but my methods of making money are definitely not inferior to anyone. Don't worry. How could it take 3 years to establish a Tang family courtyard? Follow Big Brother. You don't have to worry about anything. Big Brother will set it up for you within a year. The Tang family's third young master wanted to cry on the spot. Damn it. Looking at his posture, he only knows how to talk big. These words are too beautiful. I don't dare to believe them. Third young master, you can do this. Chu Yang said with a face full of confidence. I'll give you a sum of money first as a deposit. You will be responsible for the food and drink of everyone in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion during this period of time, including medicinal materials, weapons, metal, clothes, etc. As long as you do these things well, you will have a lot of money. Not to mention a Tang family courtyard, even if you have 3 or 5 more, it won't matter. Chu Yang patted his chest as if he was full of confidence. During this period of time, there was a serious shortage of manpower. Chu Yang was worried. It was rare for this guy to take the initiative to come and ask for money. This was really a job that fell from the sky. If you want to make money, isn't it easy? As long as you can serve my tens of thousands of people well, wouldn't purple cloud coins be as easy as drinking cold water for me? Not to mention a few 100 million purple cloud coins, even tens of billions of purple cloud coins would be a piece of cake for this king of hell. By the way, you should set up an auction house for me first. See how I can make money for you. Minister Chu's eyes turned. He wanted to streamline his tribulation space. There was too much junk accumulated in there. It took up too much space. Cleaning out the warehouse was the right way. This is not a problem. But what exactly do you want to do? What important items are you recommending for the auction? It needs to be of a very high grade. The first item must be a hit, otherwise. The Tang family's third young master was a little hesitant. This young master's tone is too big. I'm scared. It's too unreal, don't worry about it. With this big brother as your strong backing, everything will be fine. Chu Yang's tone was so big that it could swallow the sky. As long as this big brother puts in some effort, earning 10 billion purple cloud coins in a month is a piece of cake. I believe that just the commission from the auction house alone is enough for you to eat and drink for 80,000 generations. The Tang family's third young master's mouth twitched. He had no choice but to go out and do his work. Now, he could only make a Hail Mary effort. This was already his last life-saving straw. Before leaving, he begged, "Big brother, don't leave me behind. I'm counting on you. Why would I leave you behind? Don't worry and go." Chu Yang was displeased. The Tang family's third young master left immediately. Behind Chu Yang, Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian, Tan Tan and the others were trying their best to hold back their laughter. The Tang family's third young master, who had received someone's solemn promise, once again rolled away like a mule with a knife in its butt. However, this time, there was a bit more joy in his heart. Having hope was always better than having no hope. Now that he had this life-saving straw, at least he didn't have to worry so much that he couldn't sleep at night. Big brother Chu, don't worry. I will do my best to get things done properly. Whether it's basic necessities of clothing, food, housing, transportation, or training, as long as you have enough money, I will definitely get them. But don't forget to grease my hands. The Tang family's third young master really wasn't boasting this time. The Tang family's identity as a local tyrant, which had been entrenched for hundreds of thousands of years, had a long history and connections. As long as there was something in this world, as long as you had money, it wouldn't be a problem. So far, Chu Yang had truly solved the supply and demand problem of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. From now on, the Tang family's third young master was officially in charge of external affairs of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Although Chu Yang hadn't officially acknowledged it, it was already an established fact. At least, Huyen Aobua, Madame Mei and the others who were originally in charge of these things could settle down and cultivate. Chu Yang could also be considered to have solved a major problem in his heart. Next, Chu Yang focused his attention on the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. Chu Yang deeply understood one thing. There was a blood feud between him and Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, Yuan Tianjia. The other party wouldn't let him off just because of a momentary failure. As long as he didn't die, the other party would definitely not let him off. Although the two sides were currently in two different worlds and were somewhat out of reach, with Mo Yun Tian's strength, as long as Yuan Tianjia really made a move, it would definitely be like a thunderbolt. Now, it wasn't just a simple hatred of killing. There was also Meng Wuya and his Dream Slayer army. These were all related to Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, Yuan Tianjia's personal problems. Yuan Tianjia couldn't possibly ignore it and not take revenge at all. He believed that as long as the other party made a move, then his seemingly prosperous Heavenly Armament Pavilion really might not be able to withstand the other party's torment. Therefore, right now, the most important thing was to raise his strength. After all, tyrannical strength was the absolute truth. The reason why Chu Yang chose to put these people under extreme pressure to train with their lives was in fact to prepare for this matter. the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. From what Chu Yang knew, there were really a lot of such strange-shaped fruits inside. Moreover, the medicinal power of each fruit was incomparably strong. Just a small part of it was enough to raise the overall battle power of his heavenly armament pavilion by at least a big level. He remembered that back then in the heavenly continent, after at least 10% of the fruit's medicinal power was used up and then shared with him and more than 10 supreme martial artists, it was only barely enough to divide and absorb the remaining medicinal power. Even so, everyone was almost about to explode. But it was also because of that time that he and his brother's strength rushed to the level of a lower supreme martial artist in one fell swoop. Every time Chu Yang thought about it, his heart was burning with passion, but also with lingering fear. Since the last time, until now, Chu Yang hadn't given up on exploring, but he still hadn't found out what level the true medicinal power of that fruit could reach. What level? Previously, it was said that it had been used up, but that was only at least 10%. Perhaps it had been used up? Or even more. Even now, Chu Yang was still worried whether the energy contained in this fruit could make a saint explode. When he took the fruit, he was only a 7th supreme martial artist, and the remaining 10% or only 10% of the fruit's medicinal power was shared with more than 10 people. The difference between a 7th supreme martial artist and his current saint level was a great distance. But Chu Yang still wasn't sure that he could bear it. The main thing was that the experience last time was too frightening. Even with Chu Yang's audacity, he didn't dare to act rashly. Ask General Meng to come in. Chu Yang frowned and thought for a while, and finally made up his mind. Not long after, Meng Wuxia came in with a face full of doubts. During this period, he also felt that his physique seemed to have changed, and the bottleneck that he hadn't succeeded in breaking through for many years was also showing signs of loosening. He was making use of the time to urge his subordinates to practice, and didn't know why Chu Yang called him over. It seemed that Chu Yang was as busy as he was. Chapter 22-26. Minister, what orders do you have? Meng Wuxia's admiration for Chu Yang had increased over the past few days. His subordinates made breakthroughs one after another in a short period of time after using Chu Yang's method to practice martial arts. This kind of achievement, this kind of grand occasion, was the first time in Meng Wuxia's long life that he had seen it. For the first time, Meng Wuxia was full of confidence in Chu Yang's slaughter of the heavenly demons. As long as they continued to improve, the heavenly demon army would be nothing. It's like this. Chu Yang deliberated over his words and said, General Meng, there is one thing that I am somewhat hesitant about. I can't make up my mind. Well, I don't know if General Meng believes that on the road of martial arts, it is possible to advance 1,000 miles in one step or even reach the heavens in one step. Meng Wuxia was startled. This saying naturally exists if it is a special case. Especially for low-level martial artists, they can advance 1,000 miles in one step or even reach the heavens in one step if they take some kind of extremely rare heavenly treasure, or if they have been enlightened by a powerhouse. However, this kind of situation is generally reflected in martial artists below the saint level. Generally speaking, once a martial artist reaches the saint level, the amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy required is relatively large. Therefore, this kind of special case is relatively rare. Meng Wuxia was undoubtedly telling the truth, but he still hesitated for a moment and said, however, this is also a matter of method. Legend has it that there are some very rare and secret methods that are still possible, but we don't know about them. For example, this kind of extreme training that Minister has just mentioned. Chu Yang smiled. General Meng, do you really think that this kind of extreme training that everyone is going through right now, without the addition of external forces, the results would be so obvious? Meng Wuxia also smiled. The so-called extreme training was not unfamiliar to any martial artist. However, some people had trained themselves to death, and there was absolutely no such thing as a collective breakthrough in the army. He had long had doubts in his heart. Chu Yang certainly had other methods, but if Chu Yang didn't say it himself, Meng Wuxia wouldn't rashly inquire about it. This kind of big secret, the less people who knew, the safer it would be. Meng Wuxia still had a sense of propriety in this matter. But now that he heard Chu Yang take the initiative to mention it, He knew that Chu Yang was ready to solve the mystery. He smiled and said, "Please enlighten me. I have a very special treasure of heaven and earth." Chu Yang began to condense his voice into a line. He used the secret voice ending technique. This kind of heavenly treasure can increase a person's cultivation to the extreme and even improve a person's physique. During this period of time, we used this to create a huge miracle of thousands of people improving their cultivation. As the saying goes, everyone knows how to use magic tricks, and each one is ingenious and different. This is the key to my magic trick, so that's how it is. Meng Wuya suddenly realized. Then he felt strange. In this world, he had never heard of such a tyrannical heavenly treasure. May I ask the minister what kind of heavenly treasure this is? Is it possible to bestow a name? Meng Wuya asked curiously. It's a type of fruit. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "But now, we're faced with a difficult choice. If we continue to use this fruit on a large scale, the effect won't be very great. However, if we rashly give it to a single person, the medicinal effect will be too great. Even experts like you and me who have reached the level of saint may not be able to bear it. We might even explode on the spot from the enormous medicinal effect. And if we can't digest it, we'll be separated from the netherworld." Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "So, how should we use this thing? I want to discuss with General Meng. Can it really make a saint explode? How can there be such an amazing fruit in this world?" Meng Wuya asked in shock. Meng Wuya found it hard to believe that a saint-level expert would explode from overeating to the point of bursting. However, Chu Yang's words really sounded as if they were true. "It's really hard to say." Chu Yang smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know how great the medicinal effect of this fruit is, but it's not impossible to say that it could make a saint explode. In the past, after at least half of the medicinal effect of this fruit dissipated." Chu Yang recounted what happened in the past. Meng Wuya frowned and pondered. According to what Minister Chu said, the medicinal effect of this fruit shouldn't be a threat to you or me. Meng Wuya said, Minister Chu Yang said at most that time in the heavenly imperial court. At most, he would be at the level of mortal level. Maybe even lower. And the difference between mortal level and earth level is more than 10 times. And the difference between earth level and heaven level is more than 10 times. And the difference between heaven level and saint level is even greater. As for heavenly level and saint level, the difference is even greater. The difference between heaven level and saint level is like the difference between heaven and earth. It's like the difference between an elephant and an ant. Even if the energy contained in this fruit is beyond our imagination, I believe that it won't exceed the limit of a saint level. Meng Wuya was obviously very cautious when he said this. Because he knew that as long as there was a mistake in his analysis, it could lead to serious consequences that couldn't be reversed. The only outcome for a saint-level cultivator was to disappear into thin air and die. Not even a bit of his soul would be left behind. In the truest sense, his soul would be destroyed and he would be consigned to eternal damnation. Meng Wuya's words would be the basis for Chu Yang's use of this heavenly treasure in the future. Chu Yang pondered again. After a long time, Chu Yang said in a deep voice, General Meng, I called you here today to ask you to help me determine the limit of this fruit's efficacy. There is another purpose. Or rather, the other purpose is the main purpose. That is to ask you to help me test the efficacy of this heavenly treasure and the limit of a saint-level cultivator. Meng Wuya listened and nodded. He wanted to ask Chu Yang to test it, but he was afraid that Chu Yang would suspect that he had ulterior motives. After all, this kind of heavenly treasure could only be encountered and not sought. Even if there were some risks, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. If such a magical heavenly treasure was swallowed by him, it would be hard to avoid suspicion of selfishness. This was easy to say but not pleasant to hear. Now that Chu Yang proposed it, there was no problem. Meng Wuya also did not hold back. He said, I am willing to take a gamble. Meng Wuya understood that Chu Yang had said these words after careful consideration. The reason why Chu Yang had asked him to do the experiment was also due to his thorough calculations. The situation now seemed stable, but in fact, danger lurked everywhere. Changes could happen at any time. Chu Yang might be stronger, so Chu Yang had endless trump cards. In the worst case, he could escape with his life. Even if Chu Yang's trump cards were exposed, Mo Yuntian might not be able to see through Chu Yang's entire background. After all, it was too far away and they had little contact. But he was different. Mo Yuntian was too familiar with him. Whether it was his cultivation or fighting style, almost everyone in the upper management of Mo Yuntian knew about him. Especially among the saint-level cultivators, it could be said that they knew each other very well. Once some super experts came over, he could only wait helplessly for death when facing them. There was absolutely no chance of luck. So the person in the most danger now was not Chu Yang, but himself. It could be said that if he did not use this medicine, or if Chu Yang did not happen to have such a magical fruit, he would definitely not be able to escape death. As long as he was found by the enemy, the outcome was already decided. If this kind of heavenly treasure was really too powerful, and he could not bear it and exploded to death, then it was no different from being killed by the enemy. Either way, he would die. It might even be better because he would die quickly. But if he was captured by the enemy and brought back to Mo Yuntian, he might encounter unimaginable pain and suffering. On the other hand, if this kind of heavenly treasure did not cause him to explode, but instead allowed him to raise his cultivation by a large margin, then the chances of him escaping with his life, or even turning defeat into victory, would undoubtedly increase greatly. So this gamble, although he had to gamble with his life, but it was still a gamble with the benefits outweighing the disadvantages. What in the world was not a gamble? If he did not place a bet, he would never win. Chu Yang looked deeply at Meng Wuya and said, "General Meng, have you thought it through? This process may not be as easy as you think." Meng Wuya nodded solemnly. "Minister, I understand your intentions. Life and death are predestined, gains and losses are up to the heavens." His eyes had a deep sense of gratitude. It was not that Chu Yang could not experiment with this medicine. Moreover, if Chu Yang took it, the success rate would be much higher than Meng Wuya's. But once the experiment was successful, the amount of this fruit would be limited. There were too many people who needed to take it. Meng Wuya had just come over and had not done anything. If he was given it, how would people be convinced? Even though Chu Yang's prestige was very high, it was still unavoidable to plant a little negative seed. But if it involved life and death, once it failed, Meng Wuya would die. That was another matter. Even if he succeeded, Meng Wuya would become the first beneficiary. No one would be jealous or feel that it was unfair. Because Meng Wuya had risked his life to achieve this result. And it was for everyone. In this way, Meng Wuya would instead become a hero of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He would be the first to integrate into the core of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. And it would be accompanied by a substantial increase in strength. Even though Chu Yang was using Meng Wuya to test the medicine, and the risks were unpredictable, but he had indeed put a lot of thought into it. Just as Meng Wuya had said, if a medicine could cause a saint to explode, then it would not be a heavenly treasure, but the world's #1 poison. Because even after Chu Le had studied the poison scripture, she had discovered that the highest level of poison recorded in the poison scripture could only weaken a saint's cultivation to a certain extent. It was absolutely impossible to poison a saint to death. Chapter 22-27. These days I have a premonition. Meng Wuya let out a long sigh. Mo Yuntian's revenge is about to come. With His Majesty's temperament, it's very likely that something unexpected has happened for him to be able to endure for so long. Otherwise, I'm afraid that someone would have come 2 months ago. I just don't know what kind of unforeseen event happened. Meng Wuya's eyes were filled with intense worry. Will Marshal Mu be able to protect you? Will you all encounter unfair treatment because of me? Let's begin. Meng Wuya's eyes turned clear as he urged. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, I will protect you during this period of time. You have to remember that this medicine can't be exposed to the public. Once it's taken out of the storage area, the efficacy of the medicine will quickly take effect. General Meng, if you don't feel confident, you can wait a little longer before taking it. No matter what, I don't want anything to happen to you. We still have to fight side by side against the heavenly demons. Meng Wuya nodded seriously, indicating that he understood. Pay attention, Chu Yang said in a low voice. Meng Wuya's spirit shook. The next moment, Chu Yang reached his hand into the tribulation space. His palm pressed against the thin layer of the seal that was once unbreakable. With a little force, it penetrated the seal. When his palm felt the strange square-shaped feeling of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit, Chu Yang had already retracted his hand. He opened his palm, and the magical fruit appeared in his palm. Although Meng Wuya was a knowledgeable person, it was still the first time he saw such a square-shaped fruit in this world. The words on it were spinning rapidly. Countless amounts of pure spirit qi gushed out and filled the entire world. Give it to me. Meng Wuya did not wait for Chu Yang to react. He had already snatched the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. The next moment he stuffed it into his mouth without hesitation. It would be a pity to waste even the slightest bit of spiritual energy of such a heavenly treasure. When Chu Yang said that, Meng Wuya had already made up his mind. How could he allow the slightest bit of medicinal energy of such a heavenly treasure to spread? If he really could not absorb all of it, he would definitely tell Chu Yang how much medicinal energy the fruit had before he exploded. Where was the limit? Therefore, even though he had agreed to it on the surface, Shangxin had already made other plans in her heart. Chu Yang's expression subconsciously tensed up. Seeing Meng Wuya swallow the heaven and earth arcane yellow fruit in one gulp, Chu Yang couldn't help but take a deep breath and raise his entire cultivation. If Meng Wuya was in a situation where he was unable to digest the excess energy, then Chu Yang would use all of his cultivation to absorb half of the medicinal efficacy with the whale swallowing scattering technique. No matter how overbearing this fruit was, it was impossible for it to explode two sages at once. In fact, this was also a fundamental test. Chu Yang already had a plan for this. Meng Wuya would definitely not to die. But if Meng Wuya had expressed his unwillingness to test the medicine from the beginning, Chu Yang would not have forced him. But from then on, he would have to re-evaluate Meng Wuya. The facts proved that Chu Yang did not disappoint, and Meng Wuya did not disappoint Chu Yang. This could not be blamed on Chu Yang's caution. Or rather, it could be said that Meng Wuya's military talent was too important in Chu Yang's plan. In the future, he would lead millions of his brothers onto the battlefield. A single mistake could bring about irreparable losses. Chu Yang could not allow himself to make any mistakes. Although the probing this time was indeed somewhat dishonorable, it was imperative and had no choice but to be carried out. No matter what, he had to do it. Even if he felt guilty, he had to feel guilty for once. Under Chu Yang's close watch, Meng Wuya's body emitted a burst of intense white light almost as soon as he swallowed the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. Then, the white light became brighter and brighter, completely enveloping Meng Wuya's entire body. Chu Yang could clearly see that Meng Wuya's originally white face turned red in an instant. Obviously, the test he was enduring was quite severe, and there was a danger of his body exploding. The heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit was a super elixir that did not belong to this world. The first time it was used, it was indeed terrifying. Although Meng Wuya's body was trembling slightly, he still spoke calmly and steadily. Don't worry. Meng Wuya's voice was very clear. He was using all his strength to guide the energy flow into his meridians and into his dantian. At the same time, he was carefully observing, feeling, and giving the most accurate assessment. Multitasking like this, unless one had reached a certain level, it was absolutely impossible to do it with such a huge amount of energy. Take Chu Yang as an example. Because of his cultivation method and his physique, his endurance might be far above Meng Wuya's. But if the current situation was reversed on Chu Yang might be able to cope with it more easily, but he would definitely not be able to multitask and speak like Meng Wuya. This was not only a matter of cultivation, but also a difference in mental state. Most importantly, it was the difference in hundreds of thousands of years of experience. This elixir is indeed a rare treasure. It can be said that this is the first rare treasure I have seen in hundreds of thousands of years. Meng Wuya's voice was very calm. All the so-called heavenly treasures I have seen before are like dregs compared to this fruit. This is definitely not an exaggeration. The effect of this fruit is indeed great, but it is still far from enough to make a saint explode. Meng Wuya continued to comment. But if a beginner heaven man consumes this fruit, he will definitely explode in the first moment. If a heaven man consumes it, the chances of him being able to bear it if he does not have great perseverance is also not high. If a heaven man consumes the whole fruit, there will probably be no problem. Moreover, if he can fully utilize the energy of this fruit, he will have a great chance of breaking through the boundary of a saint. As for now, I have been at the peak of the beginner saint level for tens of thousands of years, but I have never been able to break through the bottleneck. However, if I fully absorb the energy of this fruit, I will definitely be able to break through the bottleneck and reach the first stage of the saint level. But there is still a considerable distance to reach the second stage. This fruit is definitely worthy of being called the world's #1 rare treasure. It's just that this fruit seems to have a special effect, which is that in the meridians, this medicinal effect will last for a very, very long time. It won't dissipate easily, so a person can only use it at most once in their lifetime. If you consume too much of it, the elixir will accumulate and it will be difficult to activate the original effect. It will only be a waste. That would be too much of a pity. Of course, this is a theoretical statement. For a person to be able to obtain such a miraculous fruit in his lifetime is already a great fortune cultivated over several generations. If you want more, it will only damage your own fortune. Meng Wuya accurately commented. Chu Yang pondered and deliberated. Meng Wuya's comments were basically the same as his original speculation. This was probably the case. After Meng Wuya finished his evaluation, he began to absorb the energy of the fruit wholeheartedly. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he did not grasp it properly, he would be the world's #1 idiot. Since he had finished his explanation, Meng Wuya quickly entered a state where he forgot about everything and concentrated on cultivation. Chu Yang looked at the expression on Meng Wuya's face. It had already slowly returned to normal. His whole body was emitting a rich holy white light. Chu Yang felt relieved. Finally, Meng Wuya was about to break through his own boundary. At this time, he could no longer stay here. At this moment, Meng Wuya no longer needed protection. If he was not careful and was targeted by the heavenly punishment, he would not be afraid. But it would make Meng Wuya's heavenly punishment more than double its power. In that case, he would really be the one who caused Meng Wuya's death. Chu Yang tiptoed and carefully walked out. Then he called out to the others and left at least 1,000 feet away from here. After a long while, the dark clouds in the skies suddenly rushed over like galloping horses. Chu Yang suddenly remembered, oh no! I've just finished decorating the study, and old Meng has ruined it just like that. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, the sky suddenly turned pitch black. Then, a thin black lightning zigzagged down. The entire land suddenly began to tremble. The heavenly punishment at the level of a saint had once again descended on Luo Hua City. The corners of Chu Yang's mouth revealed a trace of a sincere smile. This time, Tian Fa also meant that there was going to be another saint-level expert in his camp. Zi Xiecheng quickly walked to Chu Yang's side. Looking at the dark sky and the black lightning, which was even more oppressive than the heavenly punishment she had to endure that day, she asked, Meng Wuya? Chu Yang nodded. How did he improve? In his condition, it is impossible for him to break through so easily. What help did you give him? Zi Xiecheng was eager to try. I did give him a heavenly treasure, but you have just recently broken through. For the time being, you should focus on stabilizing your own state. It is not suitable for you to break through so quickly. Chu Yang smiled. Zi Xiecheng sighed and said, how could I not know this logic? But your current situation seems safe but is actually dangerous. Every additional bit of strength you have will make you safer. So I thought that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.